Buenas and half a day, everyone. Welcome to the Guam Congress Building. This public hearing by the Committee on Maritime and Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens is hereby called to order. Today is Wednesday, June 21st, 2023, and the time now is 2:05 p.m. For the record and in accordance with open government law, notices for this hearing were sent on June 14th and again on June 19th. In addition, this hearing was noticed on the Guam Legislature's website and the Guam Public Notice website. Joining me here this afternoon, my Vice Chair, Senator Jesse Lujan, Senator Joseph Agustin, Senator Roy Quinata, Speaker Therese Terlahi, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Chris Dueñas, and Senator Frank Blas Jr. So just Masi colleagues. Before we proceed, we have some general rules of conduct for all those in attendance. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide the legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Those testifying will be allowed to present written and oral testimony. Once you are done, please remain in the room for questions or additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimonies shall be confined to the nature of the agenda. The chair will invite individuals who have signed up to testify to join us at the table. Before speaking, please be recognized by the chair and state your name for the record. The order of questioning will begin with the panel of senators, and we will have a second round of questioning if needed. Personal inference about the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form or decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and may be asked to leave and escorted from the room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room. Thank you for your cooperation. First on the agenda today, we have Bill 130-37, introduced by Senator Joe S. San Agustin, Senators Roy Quinata, Jesse Lujan, Dwayne Nicolas, William Parkinson, Christopher Dueñas, and Tom Fisher, an act relative to authorizing the extension of concession agreements of the Antonio B. Wonpat International Airport Authority, Guam. At this time, I'd like to invite the sponsor of the bill, the main sponsor, Senator Joseph Agustin, for his opening remarks.
Half a day, and thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this hearing on Bill 130-37. Bill 130-37 is an act relative to authorize the extension of concession agreements of the Guam International Airport for a period of up to 3 years. But we can also ask to extend it, Your Honor, okay? It is a very simple bill. We need to help our only airport because it has been through so much over the past 3+ years with the COVID-19 pandemic and now with Typhoon Mawar. This bill is very much a typhoon-related, recovery-related bill as much as it is a bill that simply supports airport financial security and success. I understand that these concessions provide very important services to our passengers, but they also provide very important revenue streams to our airport to help with the operations. Without any one of the airport's concessions, passengers may not be able to rent cars when they arrive or find food to eat or gifts to buy themselves and others when they depart. Furthermore, without the revenues that the airport generates from these concessions, services that may be detrimental to the Guam airport's continued recovery. I understand travel recovery is coming, and we need our airport to continue to improve and innovate.
I apologize, everyone. We'll need to take a short break. We have some technical difficulties, and we need to reset the microphones. We are in recess. We are back from recess. Senator Agustin for opening statements on Bill 130-37.
Okay, we're going to try this one more time. Hafaday, and thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this hearing on Bill 130-37. Bill 130-37 is the act relative to authorize the extension of the concession agreements of the Guam International Airport Authority for a period of up to 3 years. It is a very simple bill. We need to help our only airport because it has been through so much over the past 3 years with the COVID-19 pandemic and now with the typhoon. This bill is very much a typhoon recovery-related bill as much as it is a bill that simply supports airport financial security and success. I understand that these concessions provide very important services to our passengers, and I've been through the airport and I enjoyed all the concessions. But they also provide very important revenue streams to our airport to help with its operation. Without any one of the airport's concessions, passengers may not be able to rent cars when they arrive or find food to eat or gifts to buy themselves and others when they depart. Furthermore, without the revenues that the airport generates from these concession services, that may be detrimental to the Guam's airport continued recovery. I understand travel recovery is coming, and we need our airport to continue to improve and innovate. I want to thank my colleagues that was mentioned earlier, Senator Roy Quinata, Senator Jesse Lujan, Senator Dwayne, Nicolas, Senator Will Parkinson, Senator Chris Dueñas, and Senator Tom Fisher for joining me in supporting this bill. They understand the challenges that face our only commercial airport in Guam and for agreeing that the good that Bill 130-37 does for the airport directly equates to the greater good for Guam's economic recovery and growth. I look forward to hearing today's testimony and request your assistance, Madam Chair, in reporting this bill out as soon as possible. And Sidus Marcy, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Agustin. I'll now invite members of the public who are here to testify on the bill. Mr. Brian Bamba, Chairman of the Guam International Airport Authority. Senator John M. Quinata, Executive Manager of the Guam Airport Authority. Dr. Ricky Hernandez, Deputy Executive Manager. Mr. Frank Santos from the airport. If there's anyone else here to provide oral testimony, you may join us at the table. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Brian Bamba and I am the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Guam International Airport Authority. Hafaday Senator Shelton, members of the Committee on Maritime and Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens, as well as other senators in attendance today. On behalf of the GIA Board of Directors, thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony in full support of Bill 130-37, an act relative to authorizing the extension of concession agreements of the AB WANPAT International Airport Authority, Guam. This bill is extremely important to the near-term financial recovery of the airport and for its long-term planning and trajectory. From a commercial perspective, allowing negotiated extensions with all our concessionaires will help to ensure continuity of operations and services for our passengers, especially during this critical time as the airport and its stakeholders recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and Typhoon Mawar. The GIA Board of Directors continues to applaud the management and staff of the airport for their efforts to get us through the toughest times in the airport history. Their ability to adapt to the ever-changing circumstances presented by COVID-19 and Typhoon Mawar, and for doing so while ensuring we regained low-risk oddity status and clean audits and remain a safe and secure airport 24/7. I would also like to thank the sponsors of Bill 130-37 and hope there is a broader recognition that as Guam's only commercial airport, it's the gateway for our people to explore the world, but just as important, it's the bridge for us to recover one of Guam's most important economic engines in tourism. Thank you again for the opportunity to submit this testimony, and we look forward to your continued support. Sincerely, Brian Bamba.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Bamba. Senator Quinata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for my voice. going through some changes. Going back to childhood. Good morning. My name is John M. Quinata. I'm the Executive Manager for the Guam International Airport Authority. I'm here to provide testimony in support of Bill 130-37, an act relative to authorizing the extension of concession agreements of the Antonio B. Wampat International Airport Authority, Guam. Hafiday Senator Shelton, members of the Committee on Maritime, Transportation, Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens, as well as other senators in attendance. And I'd like to recognize those. Senator Agustin, our main bill sponsor, our Vice Chair, Senator Jesse Lujan, Senator Roy Quinata, thank you. Senator Joanne Brown, thank you for being here. Speaker Talai, Senator Chris Dueñas, and my brother, Senator Frank Blas. Like what Senator Sanaganan said, Bill 130-37 is simple. It provides authority for Guam's only commercial airport to negotiate extensions of its current concession agreements for a period of up to 3 years. Although simple, the importance of this legislation cannot be overemphasized, and we thank the sponsors of this bill for their understanding and support toward GIA's pursuit of not only COVID-19 pandemic recovery, but also Typhoon Mawar's recovery. The GIA has come before this body to express the challenges faced due to COVID-19 pandemic and its direct impact on passenger traffic and GIA finances. The immediate challenges of revenue losses of over $130 million between fiscal years 2020 through 2022 were addressed head-on with cost-cutting measures, where the GIA achieved its lowest operations and maintenance expenditure amount in the last decade in fiscal year 2021. The fiscal year that was fully impacted by COVID-19, where the GIA successfully refinanced and restructured its debt to provide for lower debt service payments during the most impacted fiscal years during and after COVID-19 pandemic. And while doing all this, extending the use of $60 million received in federal pandemic-related federal aid as long as possible. But there is only so much that GIA can do that is within its control. Concession fees revenue is the single largest non-aeronautical revenue category that GIA generates, accounting for over 30% of total operating revenues on an average. It not only serves as a vital source of revenue, but it serves as that our concessions provide rental car, parking, advertising, retail, and food and beverage are undoubtedly the most front-facing services passengers experience at our airport. Bill 130-37 will allow us to negotiate extensions with all our concessions for a period that will make sense for them to continue to invest and provide such services and hopefully sustain and or improve upon the offerings to our passengers. It would also provide financial security for the hundreds of employees that our concessions hire to provide these important services. Especially with the temporary setbacks to travel we are seeing after Typhoon Mawar and the flight suspensions and cancellations through the end of this month, Bill 130-37 will help to harden the GIA's short-term financial future so we can then focus on continuing to build back our finances and welcoming the hundreds of thousands of visitors we had seen before the typhoon and before the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, on behalf of GIA, I want to express our sincerest thanks and appreciation to this committee for holding this public hearing, to the co-sponsors of Bill 130-37, and for the opportunity to provide testimony on this bill. We look forward to continuing to work with you to advance the policies and support of our only commercial airport. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Quinata. Dr. Hernandez.
Hafa Senator and members of the committee, as well as other senators. I'm just here in support of the bill and will be available to answer any questions. Just for the record, my name is Ricky Hernandez. I'm the Deputy Executive Manager for the Guam International Airport Authority. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Santos?
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm also here in support of the bill, but also to respond to any questions you may have that may be directed to me.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I also want to recognize another one of your board members, Mr. Don Weekly. And I would like to state for the record that in attendance, we have roughly 30 concession and airport workers who are here in support of the bill. We will now begin with questions for the panel before us, beginning with, you want to end or start? Okay, we'll begin with the author of the bill, Senator Agustin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to start with number one, asking the airport the importance of this bill. How important is it that this bill hopefully will pass in the 37th Guam legislature and as soon as possible? I just need to know what the importance is so that my colleagues that are here today will understand the need for this bill. How important is it? Is it critical, like you need it in 30 days, in 60 days, and that's the importance I like to hear, because I know the concessions are now all waiting to find out how fast is this going to move, and we need to be told the importance of it. If anyone could answer that, sir.
Well, I'll just first begin, Senator. Thank you for the question. And as I mentioned in my testimony, it's extremely important and time sensitive in that we do run a risk of the airport's largest revenue source in concession, which is a timely concession arrangement at the moment. And so, we hope that this will pass in the next session. And it is directly related to recovery efforts, because without it, as our airport starts recovering, we need to have concessions available at the airport in place so that we can continue generating revenues for the airport authority. And I'll defer to Dr. Hernandez here as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak on that question. I think in terms of the timeliness of this, as our executive manager mentioned, there is concessions do make up a large part of our revenue stream. I believe pre-pandemic, it was upwards of 35% of our revenue stream. During the pandemic, it slightly dipped, obviously, because of our revenues, our operating revenues, being a lot less. And so the pandemic funds really took up a big part of all the other funds that we were needing to operate. But in terms of our concessions, we do have rent-a-car, we have food and beverage concessions, and I think in terms of extending, as well as we have specialty retail and advertising. But in terms of extensions for all of those types of concessions, we believe that an up to a 3-year period, especially since we're still in pretty massive recovery efforts post-typhoon, would be helpful from a commercial standpoint. Month to month, which is what many of our concessions are on right now, is difficult for them to recover and invest in the spaces that they occupy. And so in terms of doing and being able to work with each of the concessions to be able to really see what is a good period for us to provide in terms of investing in those spaces and extending those a little longer than what has been typical is really what we're looking forward to. And the quicker we're able to get with each of the concessions and work this through, I think the better we'll be off, in terms of working through our budget for fiscal year 24. We're expecting positive enplanements or arrivals on the GVB end, and we want to take advantage of that. And so that's one of the main reasons why this bill is so timely for us, and that we can start working with all of the different concessions that we do have to get those extended for periods up to 3 years, just depending on which concessions we're working with.
Okay, but I think basically what I'm trying to get at is, any of the concession expired already? That they're ready to leave? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that if you tell me out of 100 concessions, 90% of them, their contract expired, and unless this is approved, the airport's going to be a ghost town. We need to hear this. I know what you're getting at, that you want to be able to negotiate. That's understood. That's easy. But all I'm understanding now is that the importance of this bill is it's not today. It's hopefully by next month. And that's what I'm trying to find out, because my understanding is some of the concessions here are already at the point of saying, if we can't come to an agreement and we're only going to do month to month, then I'm already going to find another place to go. And that's what I'm trying to ask, is give us something to say it's important today, not tomorrow, but today.
Senator, you hit the nail on the head. Yes, that's how critical it is. That you got major concessions that are up and they're expiring, and we need to protect that so that we can make sure that we have the ability to go forward and get this approval, so that we can continue to provide those concessionaires security that they need to make sure that they continue their investment going forward until we get a new bid out.
So within 30 to 60 days is okay. Is that what you're saying?
I say it's we need it ASAP, Senator.
Okay. That's the message
Yes.
I wanted my colleagues to hear.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair, questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, do we have a member or representative from Lotte here as well?
I think we have many from Lotte here. If there's someone who'd like to speak on behalf of...
Is there anybody here that can speak on behalf of Lotte?
Please state your name for the record.
Madam Chairman and committee members and fellow senators, I'm Tony Scrow, and I've been a consultant of Lotte for over 10 years. And the reason why I think is important that we all support the bill is because the bottom line is there is a contract is in place, has been in place for the past 10 years, and the expiration date is July 20th, but it's approximately, 29 days away. And what the airport's going to do after that, I couldn't answer. I don't know if Lotte would want to go on a month-to-month basis. It's a not very good situation for the people of Guam, not very good situation for Lotte, not a very good situation for the whole industry. The whole industry's, I think, watching what Guam Airport is doing, because Lotte has airports, concessions all over the world. And I know what they've done because of the pandemic. No different than what banks did, no different than what a lot of shopping centers did. They worked with the borrowers, they extended them out. They've worked with tenants, major tenants. And Lotte has been Lotte and the airport has had a great relationship. I say a great relationship. In the very beginning, there was an RFP. They came in, they answered to it. And in that RFP, there were talk about the China visa waiver, which never happened. That drove the numbers way up for the airport. And not a single time did Lotte ever come back during those days, those years, to ask for a reduction on the MAG rent that they were paying. And they constantly paid that rent to the airport. Bottom line is they've lost hundreds of millions of dollars. It's no secret there's been a lawsuit that's been going on for the past 10 years. Lotte has been paying all legal fees. And I am a resident of Guam, and I hate to see when, I just say it that when the elephants fight, when the big boys fight, it's the grass that gets damaged, and it's the people of Guam.
Mrs. Crow, when you say legal fees, that Lotte was paying legal fees, is that a, those legal fees, are those legal fees incurred by something that Lotte is involved with the airport, or?
Senator, actually, in the agreement, whoever was awarded the contract, and in case there was any litigation, Lotte would be paying, or whoever it is, will be paying for, of course, their own legal fees, as well as the airport's legal fees. And I'm just going to round a number off. Between the airports and Lotte's, it's approximately $40 million have been spent on legal fees.
My understanding that there is still a legal case out there.
And the
It's
case
still occurring.
is still out there, and who knows how long it's going to go. It's been, went up to the upper court, it's gone down, it went back up, it's gone down. Now there's a trial date. I think it's set for August the 2nd, and who knows where it's going.
Okay, so you're saying within the contract that whoever was awarded the contract, the concession contract, that company or that concessionaire will be responsible for legal fees incurred by the airport?
Yes.
Now, those legal fees incurred, that would be a part of, or incurred by the airport and paid for by Lotte, is that in any way offset by
No.
in any way a rent offset?
Absolutely not, Senator. Absolutely not. It's just part of the agreement.
And to date, what is that? To date, the legal fees have come to, you were saying around 40 million?
About 20 million. I'm getting the number there.
Is
Roughly
he-
about
is-
20
is-
million, and
is
that's
he-
the...
Is he a
that's-
representative of, is he a legal counsel for Lotte? Or-
No, he's the CEO for Lotte.
Okay, can you bring him up as well?
Sure.
So we can, yeah.
Yeah, that's about 20 million for the airport side, about roughly another 20 million for Lotte's attorneys.
Give us his name and your rank and serial number.
Good afternoon, all the senators. This is Danny Chan. I'm the CEO of the Lotte Duty Free Guam.
You're the CEO?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, for the main reason for this bill is important to Lotte is because of the negotiation with the brands. Because for the retail business, the contract and the negotiation with the brand, luxury brands are really important, and that needs certain amount of time should be guaranteed so that we can talk about the investment and purchase of the inventories from the brand. And that's the main reason why Lotte really needs the bill to be passed.
Now, let me understand, because I received a letter here that was dated June 10, 2022, and one June 24, 2022. And this one is Bottega Veneta, is that how you pronounce it? That's
Yes, sir.
yeah, okay. And let me understand this, because this letter was sent to Lotte Duty Free, and they a notice to non-renewal and termination of commercial agreement. If I understand this correctly, that this is a product that you guys carry?
Yes, sir. Usually, the retailers should talk to the brands in advance of their expiration date so that we can have a time to negotiate with the brands. So from the last year, some of the brands already sent a letter to Lotte. How's the extension or the next RFP is going on? so that we can start the negotiation with the,
But the letter that was penned to the general manager as well, are you, you're Daewon Shen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So you penned this letter, and it says that you had, and this is you dated June 24, 2022, that you had have received notices, brand notices, and withdrawals from your store, from Body Shop, from Chanel, from Bulgari, and from Bottega Veneta.
Yes, sir.
So they all are saying they're pulling out.
Yes, because, Lotte couldn't provide any specific, extension period to the brand. So some of the brands already sent a letter to Lotte, and we talked to the airport that we need more specific contract after.
And this is directly related to your lease or your
Yes, sir.
your
Yeah,
agreement.
it is also related to the value of the whole concession because, those brands are generating the revenues, and
Okay.
that revenue goes to the airport.
Now they say they were going to pull out by September of 2023. Is that solid? They're going to pull out. These brands are, at least this letter here, Bottega said they're going to pull out on September 2023. Is there any would this bill allow them to stay, or are they set on leaving?
Okay, honestly, sir, the brand Bottega Veneta, they already confirmed that they are gonna pull out their store, even though the extension bill is passed or not, since, Lotte couldn't provide any specific conditions or like proposal to them in a proper timeline. So Lotte should find another brand to replace the brand.
Now, let me ask you this now. Are there any brands that are standing in line, knocking on your doors, let me come in, I want to take over Bottegas?
Actually, there are some candidates, but, Lotte couldn't talk to them officially because we don't have any specific bills or like the letters and any comments from official comments. So we couldn't have chance to talk to the brands.
So they carry your brand. I mean, you carry their brands.
Yes, sir.
But you own the products, right? You own the products. You buy the products from them.
Yes, we buy all the products from the brands.
But they control. If they pull out, you can't sell their products anymore, right?
No, we cannot, sir.
So do you have? Okay, they're going to pull out on September of 2023. Do you have an inventory of their products?
So it depends on the brands, but with the Bottega, we need to return all the merchandise with a huge discount because most of the items are already, old outdated. So we cannot even, pay back what the price we gave to them.
So if a brand pulls out, you cannot continue selling that brand, right?
No, we cannot sell. We should return the items, or we should just dispose all the items without any.
Dispose of the product
yes,
if they
sir.
won't take it back?
Yeah.
And if they do take it back, they take it back at a big discounted rate?
Yes, sir.
How much inventory do you keep on hand?
In total inventory at the moment, not only for the Bottega, our current inventory level is $12 million.
12 billion in inventory at this point?
Yes, sir. For all brands at the moment, sir.
Okay. Now, your lease, your concession lease, your retail lease, is that up for expiration soon? I think Mr. Scroll answered June, or when is it?
Our current concession expires in July 20th.
So, a month from yesterday.
Yes, sir. Less than a month.
Yeah,
from
and this
today.
letter was written a year ago. We weren't
Yes.
even here. I mean, the new senators weren't even here. Why did we take so long? The airport can answer this. I mean, we're down to the 11th hour at this point, and I don't know. I mean, I know Senator San Agustin will be very aggressive in trying to get this on our agenda to get it passed. But in normal circumstances, I don't see this bill making it I don't even know if we're going into session next week on Tuesday, I think it is. And we're just having a public hearing on this bill. I'm almost positive the next, maybe the speaker can correct me with this, but the next session slated is in July, right? Well, not into the budget. Oh my gosh, leche, even worse, to after the budget. So, I mean, we're up. Senator, help me out here.
Sir, just for your information, yes, we did submit a bill on the last legislature. Unfortunately, it did not make it onto the floor, so we are trying to go through the process. We've split up the bill because, you know, the bill from the last legislature incorporated so many other issues, or 3 issues, and so we saw that that was problematic for this legislature, so we did intend to split it, or we did split it up, and focusing on what's critical at this time. And so that's why we're here today, for just the extension.
Yeah, I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, yeah, we don't want this to expire, but on the other hand, this is a two-pronged thing. You'll be losing a concessionaire if it expires and this bill is not acted on. Likewise, when they're out of there, you're responsible for the legal fees moving forward.
Absolutely right.
All legal fees.
That's what we're faced with.
You know, this is not between a rock and a hard place. This is a rock between a rock and a hard rock. Wow. Okay. Yay. Madam Speaker. Senator, you know the course. You know how this works.
I think the first is to get the public hearing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And the sense of urgency is really there. So hopefully that the senators can see that there is a critical timeline that we're dealing with.
Okay, got it. Let me ask a couple more questions here, because it says, the bill says for an additional 3 years. We already know Lote's I guess your expiration is July 20th, right? July 20th. Okay. Are all the other concessionaires expiring like real soon as well? Or within this year?
Yeah, most of them are on month to month.
Month to month?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, and then it says negotiations, to negotiate. You know, of course, the best interests of the airport, but likewise, we know we've got, of course, just getting over this pandemic and then just being hit hard by Mawar. How would that contract be? Would it be the same contract, same amount, or it's going? I don't see it going upwards.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. If I'm a
yeah,
concessionaire.
I think. Well, just to put some context, right? We did mention that concession fees are a big part of our operating revenues. We said to the tune of around 30%, pre and post COVID. And so the specialty retail portion obviously is a large part of that. And as good as every single concession does is how the airport gets its revenues. And so the better that our MAG tenants, our minimum annual guarantee tenants do, the better the airport does.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we tend to believe that this bill is very specific to trying to help the airport in its goal of preserving that revenue source by whatever MAG tenant. And I think that in terms of this one specifically, mentioning that it does expire July 20, we did mention that commercially, a month-to-month for that large, in that example, that large of a tenant is going to be difficult for them to continue on that type of arrangement. Whereas other tenants like rent-a-car, food and beverage, hard for them to invest in their spaces, but they at least have the minimum requirements to be able to service our passengers. But I think ultimately, this bill, and we're really thankful that we're here talking about it now, is really to help preserve that revenue source. And that's really, the goal of this. And whether it's our specialty retail concession, our rent-a-car concessions, this is our first step toward, trying to get over these issues that have been kind of holding us down. And, so in terms of the negotiations, it would be premature to talk about what those negotiations would entail.
I mean, when I say negotiations, because negotiations can either go up, stay the same, or go down. I just don't see, based on the recovering from pandemic and also this typhoon, I just either it stays the same or goes down. I just don't see it going up based on the traffic that we're going to have at this point.
In terms of the airport, I mean, the time we're living in now, post-pandemic, post-typhoon recovery, or post-typhoon Moar, it's been a difficult time. And the executive manager mentioned, I mean, we lost 130 million in revenues. We did get federal funds to the tune of 60 million, and that's for fiscal year 23. Obviously that also is not part of that 130 million dollar loss discussion. But we've been able to make do, but federal funds have been fully expended through, at least to date, and so
all federal funds from
federal
pandemic?
funds. Yeah, the 60 million that covered partial of the 130 million dollar loss, and then it was mentioned that we did, thanks to this legislature, we were able to get approval to do refinancing and restructuring of our bond debt. So that really helped us to get over this period of the pandemic. The typhoon obviously is hopefully a temporary, and we're expecting it to be a temporary bump and not so much of an impact such as a pandemic. But in terms of moving forward, it's timely that we talk about trying to preserve the current revenue streams that we have. And then it's not only, we don't look at it only as a revenue stream, we look at it as services to the passengers.
Sure.
And so, those are the types of things that we think the bill really represents, and that'll help all of the hundreds of employees that are employed by our concessions.
I want to understand a little more about the concession, at least Lotte and similar. Is the Guam International Airport, AB Wampat Airport, the only airport you operate out of?
So Lotte Duty Free operate like several airports and downtown stores worldwide, including Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, Australia, and also in Korea. So.
Okay. How do we compare to the other airports in regards to fee structures and traffic and things of that nature? I'm trying to understand holistically how you guys work versus the government side.
Okay. So for the comparing passenger levels and the size of the concession, like the square footage, I think I can compare Guam Airport as Vietnam airport stores in terms of the passenger levels and the size of the concession. And actually, they are paying less than what we are paying to GIA at the moment, sir.
Yeah, now, we heard about the airport's loss. You've made money, but you've probably lost money too. What is your total loss at this point?
Lotte Duty Free Guam, our total loss for 10 years is almost $100 million, sir.
Your total loss is almost $100 million?
Yes, sir, $100 million loss during the 10 years.
And you still want to stay?
Yes, sir.
What drives you to want to stay?
First of all, for the last 10 years of the operation, Lotte saw the potential at the Guam and the Guam airport. That's why, Lotte Hotel Guam also opened their door back in 2014. And also, actually at the beginning of the concession, when we prepared the RFP, actually we were expecting the Chinese visa waiver to be effective back in 10 years, but that didn't happen, and we couldn't make that enough revenue to cover our, expenses. That's why we lost so many, like hundreds of millions, and also, the legal fees, which is more than $30 million in total and $20 million for the airport. That made our, book really bad, but we saw the potential, and we've been built really good and great relationship and partnership with the GIA. That's why Lotte want to stay longer and, go along with the airport in a long-term good relationship.
Yeah.
So,
I'm no lawyer or anything like that. I mean, if one of our colleagues were here, he probably can answer this question a lot better. But if an extension doesn't happen and you exit, and just asking about your loss, about $100 million loss. Actually, if I was of any legal mind at all and everything like that, while I'm exiting, I would also file a lawsuit against the airport, and that's a great possibility, right?
yes, sir.
It's another lechitan.
Senator,
Yeah.
can I say something? We've actually had a very good relationship with the airport. I've got a lot of history personally with the airport. When I say that, I've chaired that airport for 2 different governors. Way back from Joetta, I chaired that board. And I kind of know quite a bit about it. I know who was there before. There was no such thing as an RFP then. It was just one vendor, controlled the whole industry, from downtown to the airport, made bundles of money, and here we are today.
Yeah.
Finally, we were able to get a new RFP out. An RFP came out, and there was actually, I recall, four large companies that came out and picked up the RFP. I know 2 were Koreans. One were from Korea. One was Lotte. The other one was Sheila. Huge companies. And we knew it was kind of sacred when I say that. I use that word. Because, when you have something for many, many years, and all of a sudden you don't have it, it creates a problem. So I give kudos to the airport. One thing, whoever put that clause in about paying the legal fees, because there's no way the airport can afford this kind of battle. There's just no way. And, I just hope that we'll get the support to get this bill passed for 3 years. The bottom line, when we first met with the airport concerning this bill, it all had to do with one thing. It was to try to recover the losses after the pandemic. It had nothing to do with anything else. It was trying to recover the loss for all concessionaires after the pandemic.
Yeah.
If we go back to our files and our correspondence, that's all it talked about.
Yeah. No, I thank, of course, Lottie for their patience in this whole situation, because again, I can't answer for a year ago, but here we are today, and it expires in 29 days basically, and so and I'm understanding that the budget, unless it's an emergency situation and we do this, or Lottie continues to be the nice guy and not do anything. But, nice guys don't pay the $100 million loss. I mean, I know you're trying to be a nice guy, but, I'm trying to be a nice guy too. A friend of mine hit my car a couple weeks ago and still hasn't tried to settle it, so I'm getting ready to file a lawsuit. And then, it's not $100 million, but, and so again, nice guys don't pay, the $100 million loss. So, the onus is on us now to be able to get this going, and preserve our concessionaire and concessionaires, and likewise have somebody else pay our legal fees and not incur more legal fees that may possibly come about as an exit, a possible exit, and those are the possibilities. When I'm reading the letter and I'm reading the expiration date and all this, there is a great possibility. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that a lawsuit may also be on top of other lawsuits that that GIA may incur. So that's where we're at. And so anyway, Madam Chair, I think I've had a stomach full already, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Senator Dueñas, questions?
Madam Chair, and Senator Quinata and board members and others that have come forward today to support this legislation. I certainly can feel the urgency noted by the Vice Chair, and for that reason I'll be very brief in my questions so that I want to, I mean, it's not a miracle for us to be able to compile a committee report. As I'm saying, I only have 2 questions, and possibly try to get this on for this session. Because we had our rules meeting on Monday, we will not be going into session, I believe, as the speaker mentioned. Well, she knows that date. But there's a chance we could get the committee report done and uploaded and have it added to this session with proper notice, with the 5-day notice requirements as well, because it could be the last bill that we discuss in session. So I'm gonna hope for that, because I see the need to. I think what's important here, and I thank all of you, at least 4 of you on this panel, for meeting with several of us to, first of all, express the urgency, and second of all, discuss how you have understood that you have some other plans that you need to try to put in place for revenues for the airport, but that's not where we're at today. And we also met prior to Mawar, so we're really not there today. We're in a critical situation. And I know for the comfort level, maybe of some of my colleagues, I wanted to put this on the record as I understand it. You are negotiating concessions as you normally do anyways, which would be subject to approval by the board, and you're not asking for any exponential procurement exceptions. And so we're not sitting here dealing with an open-ended situation. We're dealing with your normal course of negotiations as you have your procurement. Can you please put that on the record, Senator?
You're absolutely true. Yes, that is exactly what we're trying to do there, Senator.
And given the fact that you're on a month-to-month with several of your vendors already, and probably many of them have been able to withstand this because they probably don't have the significant, although it's significant to them, capital outlay that a company like Lotte does, and probably, although I've incurred losses, maybe not to the extent. So obviously any company would want, as you're saying, you're positioning now for recovery, because let's be clear, this is not a Mawar issue, this is a COVID issue. And then I understand that's why in the prior legislation you were trying to further levelize your risk. But of course that, we can have discussions about that, but I want to go back to that once again to understand the urgency and the fact that many businesses have held out, have stuck it out, who still want to stick it out, but it's vital to have at least this window to where they understand this is a doable window for most leases to be able to say it's worth the risk. We can go back to our corporate headquarters and say, this is where we're at, let's make a go of it. And it's vital for the airport because, as Ricky, as I understand it, and put this on the record as well, what you're basically saying is most of these contracts are negotiated based on what the expectations are. And so you can not overburden, but you can also do something with this tool. We've been talking a lot about tools and toolboxes lately to be able to have incentives so that, God willing, brighter days ahead in the months, weeks, and years going forward, this could work out to where it turns around and the airport gets a lot more stable. Can you put that on the record, Ricky?
Yes, Senator. I agree.
So that's my willingness and my support. I know that it's this body's operation to be able to comb through things and look through things and be skeptical to make sure that, you know, we're passing legislation that's solid and whatever else. My comfort level with this is your normal course of business. These are extenuous circumstances. We can point at each other and try to make a decision on why we're here, but, you know, in the interest of the vitality and vitalness of the airport and what it means to us, I feel comfortable that this negotiation is such that it really is kind of pro forma in the terms of it's not giving you anything that you wouldn't already have except for time. So if that seems correct, I'm going to maintain that comfort level, stop talking so we can do a committee report, and hopefully get it done. But Chairman Bamba, if you had any comments, I'm closing at this point.
No, I would like to say thank you for taking the time as well to understand the situation. Appreciate that.
Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Senator Quinata.
Obviously, I'm a co-sponsor of this legislation. I know the intent of this bill. We need to rectify the issue, need to figure out how to invest in our island and figure more or less how to ensure that tourism and the market bounces back. Obviously, we've been faced with numerous challenges. I'm thankful for your continued investment in our island and our people, most especially the employees you've continued to employ with obviously upholding a deficit. I don't think in any business you would like to keep running a red line on your account, right? So, I'm a co-sponsor of this bill to ensure that we make investments responsible and also ensure that our people are taken care of. We need to make sure that these people are employed, have a job. I mean, we are already having a difficulty trying to find jobs for those who are graduating and trying to keep our island attractive. So obviously my support's here, and I'm hopeful for this legislation to get through its committee and push forward onto the floor. I also authored the legislation to extend the 30-year lease to also strengthen the airport's ability to possibly engage with other businesses beyond you guys, so that we can possibly have warehouse operations along the apron of the airport, because economic development has to happen, and we need to be able to understand the economics and also the investment purpose. No one wants to invest in an island if we only have 5 years. It's not smart. You're going to, no offense, run into a deficit if you keep putting money into something you only have 3 years. Even Burger King's logo there at the airport is probably still the same logo when I was born. No offense to Burger King owner, just, you know. But again, I don't blame you for not wanting to invest in the airport in renovations, because it's not worth it. You're going to eventually get pushed out because you're not leased for that extent, right? So wish you guys all the best, and thank you for your continuous investments in the island. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Quinata will continue with committee members. Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for those who are here. Could I get a show of hands of all those who are here for LOTI? Thank you. So the majority of, well, actually the only vendors who we received testimony from was LOTI. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Yes, Madam Speaker, at this time.
All right. And so I appreciate you all being here and what's at stake for you. Just want to find out from the airport, when you received the federal funds and during the pandemic, and of course all the operations were drastically closed, and I remember you telling us that you were able to give some relief to the concessionaires or vendors.
Yes, under the, I forget the name, it's called CRISA, we call it CRISA, Coronavirus Response and Recovery Supplemental Appropriations Act, and then ARPA. They both included concession relief, and there was different aspects to it, but they both generally were required for us to provide concession relief. So there was about $500,000 in the CRISA, and 1.5 million, I believe, in the ARPA.
Did that extend to the parking services also?
I believe the first one, CRISA, did, because they had different requirements. And so CRISA, I believe, was extended to the parking concession, and then ARPA was extended to all of the concessions.
All right, so I think I heard, so Loti said that their lease expires in July 20th, and now you said that the rest are all on month-to-month, so all of them have already expired?
Yes, that's correct. Well, they're on month-to-month, so they haven't yet expired.
When did their terms end?
It just depends on the specific concession. So,
Well,
but it was, I don't have them in front of me, but I mean, we have food and beverage, we have our advertising, we have our rent-a-cars.
We don't have a list, we just have categories of vendors, but we don't have a list of the different, like, spaces or how they were rented out, which ones expired when. I don't see that list. But normally, the airport is going to resolicit, right, before that time period, way before the time period. Like, there's no way we would have seen you guys soliciting now for a lease that it ends in July. So I guess I just want to hear your rationale why you haven't resolicited for any of these. Our procurement law is based on this concept that the more competition, the better deal you as an airport are going to get as a landlord. And by limiting the competition, you're limiting your potential to increase the rental amounts. The director said that you're expecting revenues to increase in 2024, as soon as that. And so I'm just curious, sounds like these might have even expired before the pandemic?
Yes, that's correct. I guess there is current ongoing litigation, and we try not to comment on things related to that, but we will mention that because of that ongoing litigation, there's been some challenges as it relates to putting out new solicitations for concession-related services.
And when are those challenges going to end?
I wish we knew.
Are you saying you're not going to resolicit until the litigation is done?
Well, I know that, thanks for the question, Speaker. As it relates to prior legislation that we were supporting as well in the 36th Guam legislature, we were looking to promulgate rules and regulations for the solicitation, selection, and award of concession agreements. And so I think as it relates to that, that's probably our key to moving in that direction.
Well, that's a wish, right? But that's not a necessity to resolicit. Are you on good authority to continue the leases month to month?
Well, we believe so.
I'm asking because I was also checking out, there's a previous statute that authorized an extension of the previous main concessionaire. And when that statute was passed, it was very specific. Well, one was not, one was very general. It allowed for an extension. Then there was one, and the extension was only granted with very specific terms. It put the terms into the law. And I know you guys are saying you're not going to tell us any of the terms. We don't even know whether these leases are going to go up or down in revenue for the airport. And I'm very curious about that. So, yeah, I just don't get the plan. And I don't get why you haven't resolicited if you have the potential of going up. You could have resolicited and said, everybody's bid must be exactly, no less than what you have today. And that guarantees you go up, or you go nowhere, or you get nobody to bid. But that hasn't been the case. There hasn't been that situation yet, right? So I'm just still trying to figure out how you say it benefits the airport to renegotiate for the next 3 years. Are you intending to renegotiate up or down? Because it sounds like you're intending to negotiate down.
Well, I think given the market conditions, we're going to do our best to do what's in the best interest of the airport, subject to the board's approval. And I think in terms of, I had mentioned previously that there's some uncertainty as to the ability for us to solicit. And even if there wasn't any uncertainty related to the litigation, then we might have not been a good time to do it during COVID, given the market conditions and the conditions of recovery. And so, that's why I think, and as other airports around the country as well as some in the region have done, is they have been extending their concession agreements for a period of time in which the concessions were impacted by COVID.
If there was a risk, you're talking about two different things now. So if the market, you're saying there's a risk that the market, you're not going to get a response because of the pandemic, because of COVID. And so your offers might be less than what you received today. I think there's ways of writing that into your procurement that doesn't happen, right? You get a minimum of what you have today. And it sounds like they're very willing to continue at what they have today, otherwise your vendors wouldn't still be there on a month-to-month basis. They're very willing to stay there on the current terms, it seems. So you would get at least that, but you might get more.
The first thing I mentioned was that, and I'll reiterate it again, that the litigation has placed uncertainty.
Let's set that one
on
aside for now.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So all the others. You didn't give us any terms, you didn't give us any indication whether you intend to renegotiate up or down. How is it going to benefit the airport, besides having somebody in there? These guys are obviously willing to stay there month to month without a long-term commitment because they see value in it. And so I'm guessing, that's why I'm asking you, do you have anything else to show for that? I'm guessing that others in the market would find value in that as well.
Thank you, Senator. If I could just add, the goal is obviously to increase revenues for the airport, and I believe that this, notwithstanding the discussion of a very valuable partner of the airports, is for everybody, right? And so if I were just to use, let's just say, the F&B guys, right? And Senator Quinata had mentioned about one of them having a sign. So the ability for someone to reinvest in their business, obviously they would see that there's value in reinvesting, but to recoup that investment, they probably need some terms. And that's what we're looking for, is some terms to allow us to have the negotiations occur, and with the hope of increasing revenues to the airport. Ultimately, it's to be driven by more passenger activity at the airport, and the airport serves as one pillar of our tourism industry, right? And we have to provide the infrastructure to facilitate tourists arriving onto Guam. But at the same time, the revenues that are generated on the airport from these passengers are a function of the volume of passengers that come through. So the more passengers we can get, the more volume that passes through the airport, the more opportunity there are for a concessionaire to earn revenue, as well as the airport as a participant to that revenue. So my goal is that we increase them.
Increase revenue?
Yes, and the market conditions that...
in the next 3 years, I mean, under this law.
So when we look at what's happening in the next 3 years, we were kind of on a recovery trajectory, right, with tourism, and we saw passengers coming back into the island. And we started to see airlines that were posting more flight schedules from different source markets. And I think that that's a good sign. And so do you put something out when the market is low, or do you put something out when it's the right time? And I think, the airport stands to be in a better position when passenger traffic increases. And those are opportunities that an investor in a concession may look favorably on as something that they want to pay more for. That's just the goal, right? But the timing of the market, I think, was looking like we were going to see good numbers within the 3 years. We could still very well happen. It was kind of, put a bump in by the typhoon. But.
All right. And what about under this bill? If this bill's passed, you're expecting revenues to increase when in your renegotiations?
Yeah, that's my expectation, yes.
Director?
That's absolutely correct. We definitely want to see our expectations to see revenues increase.
Okay, so if these concessionaires are willing to pay more, right, in order for revenues to increase, that's what would happen?
I would see that they got, let's say they got a timeline extended to up to 3 years, that they'll be willing to invest a little bit more and not lose what they have now, and also to try and get back what they lost during the pandemic.
Okay, them getting back what they lost is different than the airport making more revenue. That's why I'm asking you to explain that. Because if we're going to do this for their benefit, we extend them and give them time to make up for what they lost. But how does it, that sounds like you're either doing status quo or less.
Yeah, maybe I can, if you don't mind. Yeah, maybe I can just answer a little bit with a little bit more background in terms of these concessions. These concessions, rent-a-car, specialty retail, they operate under what we call minimum annual guarantees. And in terms of traffic, if, for example, we were to base the revenues on traffic enplanements, and you know, because the market has changed as it relates to how concessions negotiate with airports post-pandemic. And so previous to that, there was generally a minimum annual guarantee. And now the market is completely changed. And so there are things that are variable. So as we recover, for example, if we were to base revenues on per sales, which means that if there were more people purchasing, then we would get more revenue as we would get a percentage of those sales. And so, you know, for the airport, we want to make sure that, you know, that we obviously get the most out of our concessions, but we also want to make sure that we understand that all of our concessions are our partners. And so we're not going into this trying to, you know, make one concessionaire more successful than another, or, you know, try to have some, we're looking at this as what's in the best interest of the airport, and we're going to have our board members also question us as we get into this and hopefully get to finalize some negotiation. But, you know, in terms of the statements that we're trying to get more revenue, we're going to want to try to get more revenue, especially as compared to COVID, because the revenues have not panned out because of the impact of passenger traffic. And so because of the market changing around how concessions are negotiated, now we're going to have to take a look at how that works. And we have already. There are different models on how, you know, we could structure a specialty retail concession, a food and beverage, which is just percentage of their sales, plus some common area fees. You know, with our rent-a-car companies, you haven't seen any new rent-a-car companies, but we've been working with them on a month-to-month basis, and they're on percentage of sales. So as passenger traffic improves, you know, we're hoping that leads, obviously, and that's what we're hoping for, to more revenues. So, but you know, in terms of what should be negotiated, you know, we could sit right here saying that we're going to negotiate the best deal for the people of Guam, and you know, we hope that could be taken at face value. But I mean, you know, there's a lot of checks here where, you know, it's management, board, and then it's, you know, obviously something that we're going to have to live with. So the airport is in a position where we're seeing this growth. Well, we're not going to see it pre-pandemic numbers in 2024. We're just not going to see that. And so if we're not seeing that, how does that impact our ability to negotiate? And I think all of these factors kind of play into that. And that's what we're really looking at. We're trying to get the best deal for the airport, but then understanding the reality that, you know, there are different market forces out there, that this is a shorter term contract than was originally agreed upon. So, you know, 3 years versus 10, because this past one was 10. So, you know, I think those are the considerations that we're going to be making. But, you know, we can sit here and tell you we're going to make the best deal on behalf of the people of Guam that we can.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that the legislature, we're being asked to authorize that the airport forgoes regular procurement. This is very special, that you're going to forego regular, bid it out and get the best competitors and get the highest that you can get, right? We're saying don't do that if we pass this bill and go with the same vendors and the language just says, and negotiate almost anything you want. It does not say that it's going to guarantee more revenues for the airport in this language. It doesn't say that, it doesn't say anything about the terms. That's what I'm saying. I'm comparing it to the previous laws that were passed and where they extended for different reasons. And at least in one of those, they were very specific about the terms. It has to be at the minimum this, gross that. So that's why I'm curious, because we're forgoing competition, which might bring you greater revenue. It might, just the same way you're predicting 2024 and, et cetera. The market might be predicting that as well. And it looks like it's still valuable for these vendors to stay in there. And I just don't hear that rationale of why you're forgoing the competition that might bring you greater value, unless you're trying to give lesser value. That's kind of why I keep asking. All right, and now for the big concession, you're saying you want to extend this because you, but before I move on, when should you have set out your RFP for the next batch of leases, or how far in advance do you do that? A year before they expire, 6 months, or what?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the answer previously that the litigation has placed uncertainty in
No,
our
I'm saying
ability.
for those others before we move on to that big vendor.
Yeah, I think typically for the larger concession, we would do that. We would start that process a couple years in advance.
Couple years.
Yeah.
That's another thing, right? They're all been on month to month since before the pandemic, you said. I don't understand that. Why wasn't that done before the pandemic then?
Yeah, because of the uncertainty the litigation has caused in terms of our ability
No,
to
I'm
solicit.
talking about the other vendors.
All of them. All concessions.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
They're all under litigation? What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's just the impact the litigation has had on our ability to solicit. There's uncertainty as to what and how we are able to do that. And that's why we've been pursuing rules and regulations. And that's what was in the prior bill before us. And so I hope that answers the question, because further to the commenting on the active litigation, we probably want to defer that.
So you're saying on the record that you guys do not intend to solicit even after 3 years unless the litigation is over, you're saying, unless we pass other laws. That's what you're looking for. And those weren't really all rules and regs. Most of it was you were trying to get a longer term lease. It's got nothing to do with the litigation or the rules and regs.
Yeah, it's not the conclusion of the litigation. It's the one of the aspects of the litigation that has put our ability to solicit in question, uncertain.
I don't understand that.
We would have put out a solicitation if we thought there was no uncertainty.
So you're saying the litigation has tied up procurement of any concessionaires?
That's our understanding, yes.
I don't understand that. Okay, so have the prices on the parking gone up in the last few years?
No, it hasn't.
You sure?
I'm sure.
I remember the airport coming in here asking the legislature for authority, something for its third wing, the new wing in international incoming passengers. And we talked about this, but I've seen the prices go up. I don't know, we use that.
Since I've been the executive manager, ma'am, it has not gone up.
Okay. All right, I'll take your word for that. All right, and then this concessionaires, you don't treat customs as a concessionaire, is that right? So their lease, they don't get to renegotiate with you some lower deal? Or
customs,
can we make that a condition of this, that they're going to finally get their
Well, I
free
think-
space in there?
Yeah, so Customs pays specifically what the other terminal tenants pay, similarly situated. So I will note that since fiscal year 2020, in February, we had lowered the amount of space that they were renting, which has led to almost $2 million in
Yeah, but
reduction.
it's still the same
in rent.
rate, it's just a lesser space, right? And so they had to
Yes.
move some of their stuff to another place.
Yeah, and I will note too that the space that Customs rents is not only the inspection space, but part of the leases that they pay is also their office space that is outside of the terminal building, as well as their cargo space. And then also their K9, which is in another building separate
Yes.
on the south ramp, so.
I know, but I'm talking about the terminal space, right? That's what we've been talking about for years. All right, so when, you know, the statute, again, that I'm talking about, where when they made an exception and allowed a current contract to be extended, they were specific about the terms, and, you know, the legislature approved those terms. Or it required that any extension would be brought before the legislature, because it's also explicit in your statute that authorizes agreements between the airport and concessions. It says, shall not be extended in duration or otherwise modified unless the extension or other modification conforms to requirement of this section. And that's why I guess we're doing a bill, is to create another exception to this, right? Yeah, and so, again, the theory is just that you're precluding yourself from competition, which is supposed to be our only protection for better value for the people of Guam, right? And I haven't heard anything that shows me we're going to get a better value by eliminating competition, not bidding it out. I mean, I've heard, yes, that there's a lawsuit that's tying you up, but maybe we should see efforts of how we're going to resolve the issues in the lawsuit versus, or whatever's tying up your ability to procure again for new concessions, right? And that I don't think we have seen. But, so for the, yeah, so I feel for Loti, July 20, and I can see your issue with the vendors, the other vendors that you also deal with. Does Loti get to go on a month-to-month after July 20?
That's a very good question, because we don't know.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. You know, listening to the discussion, you know, there's like several layers of issues going on here. This is not as clear-cut as we would like it to be, and I had similar questions the speaker had with regards to your other vendors and why they are on a month-to-month. Do you have a court order that prevents you from issuing new or going out to do new bid solicitations for your other spaces at the airport?
Court order. No.
So why haven't you gone out and done so? What prevents you? I mean, litigation's litigation. Attorneys all have their positioning and opinions, but short of a court order, what does it mean?
Yeah, it's because it's under litigation. I think in terms of just parts of the litigation that has been, that's obviously still under review, there's questions and uncertainty as to our ability to even put out. We would have put out a solicitation for all of the concessions if we didn't think that there was an issue. But, you know, me commenting further on that or us commenting on further on that while it's still in litigation, especially because litigation's very obviously complicated. But, you know, the best interest of the airport, we would have done what we could. But because of that, we've refrained from.
Well, how do you act in the best interest of the airport if you're timid? I mean, I would, short of a court order, I would challenge that. If you want to take me to court on that issue. But to abdicate Your ability to issue leases on all your other properties there that you have that you lease out to your other vendors for restaurants and, you know, food service and all that other stuff. I would challenge that. I don't think I would sit back and say, oh, you decide everything for the entire airport property. Again, short of a court order, it has no value. It has no value. Because who's going to make you do what? So that in and of itself is another issue that probably the committee needs to look further into, because again, these are public assets. They're not owned by you or me individually. I mean, they're owned by our community, and we want to make sure that they're protected because someone wants to come in and muscle their way in. You know, what do? You sit back and give in? If we did that, good Lord, we'd have all kinds of interests taking over public assets, because there's always intent to do that. I certainly experienced that at the Port Authority of Guam, and we challenged it, and we won. So you can't do that if if they think you're going to blink and you're going to back off, then they will push. Money and greed motivates like nothing I have ever seen. And it's very ugly. But you have to decide whose interests you're there to protect. And if they think you're going to blink and back off, they will push, and they will push. And all of a sudden, your asset, the people's asset, becomes they start controlling the agenda. So I'm not comfortable with the fact that this is the response personally, because I just think the airport should be more aggressive. Anything short of a court order to me is absolutely nothing. And they're going to hire attorneys that are going to harass, they're going to try and intimidate, they're going to make you want to blink and make you scared, because that's what they do. But like I said, every attorney's opinion is exactly that until the court decides otherwise. So I think you need to think about that, because now I'm beginning to wonder to what degree our assets are in good hands, because that does concern me. I understand the issue. If we were simply here talking about the pandemic and the impact of the last 3 years, I think we all saw the impacts, and certainly greater on our airport, on our tourism industry, were the hardest hit. All the support businesses to those industries were the hardest hit. I think we recognize that. So if we were simply talking about that issue, it's like, yeah, we understand fair is fair. We want to keep things moving. We want to keep our airport viable. We want to keep our tourism industry viable. So it certainly makes sense, sure. We should, in all fairness, allow them the time they've lost, the revenue opportunities they've lost. We want to be a good partner in this process, sure, let's give the 3 years. But this is a little more complicated, it appears, than what you're presenting to us today. And then also, I mean, what was the contingency? If the legislature doesn't act on this, what is the contingency plan? What is the contingency plan put in place? There's always got to be plan B, C, and D.
So we have looked at different contingencies, and worst case scenario, we're not going to have a vendor up there or vendors up there at the airport. The airport has to assume all responsibilities.
So why would you think the legislature passing this would give you any more strength than your own abilities to lease? Because obviously for all these many years, everybody was under the guise, including you, that you had the ability to lease your properties.
Yeah, I think the ability to lease is obviously a separate issue than trying to solicit for concession agreements. Obviously, it is a lease, but it's also a revenue-generating lease. So I think in terms of our ability to, we've obviously talked internally about what those plans are, and because we're talking here about potentially trying to negotiate, preserving what our plans are.
I can appreciate all that.
Helpful.
I don't need to get into the intimacy of those discussions, and I have no interest in doing so, but you're not doing anything unique that any other U.S. airport or other airports in the world do. What is so unique about having concessionaire agreements and lease agreements with your customers? What is so unique about that? Every airport I've been into has vendors. Big vendors, little vendors, but vendors. I don't see the difference. There's nothing unique about this. I mean, you have to understand, you're coming and presenting to us, you currently, have all your vendors at least on a month-to-month, and then you're telling us your larger vendor, probably by next month, if we don't pass this, you'll have no vendor at all, and they're not going to be able to continue. What is that? You're a toothless tiger. And I don't understand how or why. I mean, I've run the port. I've taken on those challenges with others. And like I said, anything short of a court order, I wouldn't blink. I mean, I don't understand where you're at, that you're not, you're hesitant even to issue those notices out to allow interested vendors to come in and rent your and lease your space, whatever the time frame, your 5-year time frame that you have.
Yeah, I'll just mention too, Senator, and I appreciate your position on it, right? I think in terms of, the litigation and its impact on the ability to solicit, because of that, obviously we wouldn't want to put out something that could be questioned. And I know that...
Questioned by who?
Well, it could be challenged because it is in litigation.
Then let them challenge.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the market, putting it out and assuming that potential offerers will bid on something that may be, or put in a proposal.
Well, obviously your current vendors are willing to do it from month to month. Why wouldn't they take a chance on wanting to do it for 4 years or 5 years?
I mean, even other potential
You're immobile
offers.
already.
Yeah.
You're immobile without a court order already. That's how it appears to me. You simply are not moving left, right, up, or down. You're moving nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, you have in your possession a public asset of now, our concern as well, because we're here to represent the voices and interests of our public, and wanting to make sure that public assets are, operating in the interest of our community. But from my vantage point, you guys are moving nowhere. But yet you're asking us, and you think what? You don't think there'll be litigation if we pass this into law? You don't think your current company that is challenging you is not going to challenge this? Maybe they'll challenge the ability of our ability to pass legislation that impacts contractual agreements. I just, I have a different position. I just don't concede real estate. I don't concede space if I believe that we are in the right. I just don't do it. I personally don't. That's not been my leadership style. Just concerned because you guys sound very immobile, and to come to us at this late date to ask us to rescue this situation, and then you can't tell us anything anyway because it's under litigation. Even your argument there, I don't understand. I don't need to understand the details of what's going on to say, hey, wait a minute. This is a public asset. It's owned by our people. So understand, I'm a little more concerned walking in, leaving than I was walking in, because it seemed pretty clear-cut that we're simply trying to, in all fairness, 3 years, the pandemic adversely impacted these companies, and we just, in all fairness, think they should be given that additional time because of their inability, because of the lack of visitors and the flow of tourists and other travelers coming to Guam, that we should give them a fair opportunity to recover that. I think that's a goodwill opportunity. It's a good message to extend out in the business community and to others that may want to come and invest in the airport or Guam in the future. Seems very clear-cut. But I'm a little concerned about the fact that the airport's not being more assertive in protecting its interests. And I would simply do that by saying, okay, go ahead and challenge me. Challenge my ability on our asset, on our property. And we had a business that wanted to challenge us on public property, wanted to take over public property, wanted a court order that said if we couldn't provide them the money they claim we owed, they could take over our property. And we didn't just say no, we said hell no. So I'm a little concerned that short of a court order, you are acting as you are, and in fear, intimidation, essentially, of taking action to do what you would normally do in the course of your operations. Issue these lease agreements. If nobody wants to take them, then that's their choice too, but to not even do it because you fear, or they're saying this or that, I'm like, prove it, challenge us. Because how can they enforce it short of a court order? I'm just bringing that up because I'm sure we're going to have to discuss this. I mean, I understand the issues and concern Loti has brought forth. I mean, it's been a difficult road. I'm not intimately involved with all the details, but just from the public reports, I think we all have heard over the years the challenge that's been involved in that particular case and the history. I mean, I've been around long enough to remember the previous vendor, for those of us that have been here a while. And I understand the concerns of the employees out there wanting to know what is our future. We've all put our time, our lives, our investment, and even if, we can always go on and do other things, there's a personal investment in what you do, especially if it's something you enjoy and it's what you believe in. It's not something you want to give up easily. But again, I'm just a little concerned about the position the airport's taken overall with regards to this litigation that is essentially, it's paralyzed you. It appears from my perspective, and again, I'm just on this side of the aisle, it's paralyzed your ability to move forward. And I just, short of a court order that's gone as high as it can go telling me something, I'm going to protect my asset. I'm not going to have someone from the outside come and tell me, especially the public asset owned by our people, that they get to control that. And it sounds to me like through their litigation, they are controlling that right now. So I understand what you presented, but you've given us a lot to think about. I'm not sure yet how I want to proceed on this issue, but thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to ask questions and comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, and everybody here that's here to participate in this discussion. To some degree, I have to agree with the sentiments that were expressed and the concerned sentiment expressed by Senator Brown. However, recognizing this, I guess, Dr. Hernandez, if I can, or, Director Quinata, brother, if you can explain to some of the intricacies or some of the concern issues that you've had to deal with in being able, that led you to come to this body and ask for this extension, for this lease. Short of, again, not divulging anything that may hinder in as far as current litigation. What were some of the extraordinary circumstances, if there were, that led to this here, that led to you having to come to this body to ask for this extension or authorization for this extension?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Braz, if you don't mind me answering. I think in terms of the circumstances we faced, obviously the pandemic has been one of the bigger ones outside of talking about litigation. And I think in terms of how that's impacted the airport as well as all of our concessionaires as well as our tenants, it's been, obviously a challenge. Challenge is probably understating it. But I think in terms of, the airport's plans and what we were able to execute throughout the pandemic, and the executive manager mentioned, we were able to address those things during that really, really tough period, especially in fiscal year 21, when that was a full year of the pandemic impact, where travel had ceased for the entire fiscal year. And so, the airport responded by being able to reduce our operating and maintenance expenses to the lowest level in 10 years. And really work with the contractors, work with our vendors, and work with our concessionaires to try to weather that really long storm. And so I think in terms of the challenges outside of the uncertainty that litigation has presented itself, for, all the parties, I think that's probably really what has pushed. And I know that we had come to the body with a bill that included this provision, but also included other ones because we were looking at not just the near-term success of the airport, but really looking really long-term, trying to diversify our revenue streams, because what we've seen in the pandemic and what we've seen during the typhoon, even just for this 1 month, is that there are ups and downs, and the pandemic was a real big downer for all of us. And so, trying to diversify the non-aeronautical type things, and that, we wanted to incorporate all those plans in a bill, but I know that there had been some questions as it relates to that, and so that's why we're here with a simplified bill, knowing that at some point in the future, we're probably going to see if that's something that the body can consider. But, at this point, that's what's really brought us to this, this hearing is really just to try to preserve the near term, and then we can work on the medium to long term, after we get through this.
Okay. With respect to the month-to-month agreements, with the smaller concessionaires, and recognizing that there were some concerns with regards to whether you were in the litigation, were there other issues, were there other concerns that came to your mind with regards to why you couldn't deal with those other concessionaires or the agreements of the other concessionaires over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think just to be clear, right, I think, you know, as we talk about how the litigation has really placed uncertainty on that, you know, it's for rent-a-cars, for example, you know, we have had them on month-to-month for quite a bit of time, and you know, as it relates to what are some of the challenges with that, is that, you know, if a rent-a-car company pulls out, we haven't had the chance to put that out to some type of competitive solicitation. And I think, you know, if we were able to do that, that might have yielded different, you know, different types of offerings, because there are different rent-a-car companies out there. Not to say that the ones that we have aren't sufficient, it's just a matter of, you know, being able to see that. And the way that those work, as I understand, because I haven't been through a bid since I've been at the airport for rent-a-car concessions, is, you know, there's a bid that goes out, and I believe the highest gets the best space. And so, you know, and the highest meaning percent of sales. Yeah, the highest meaning the highest minimum annual guarantee for space. So, you know.
Can you repeat that again? The highest what?
MAG. We call them all the concessions that we're talking about are minimum annual guarantee. Not all of them, because food and beverage is percentage of sales, as well as advertising. But
can you explain that a little bit more? What that concept is?
Minimum annual guarantee.
Yeah,
yeah, sure. And so minimum annual guarantee is, so these types of concessions, they pay premium because they're generating revenue. So these are really considered revenue generating contracts. They're not spending contracts. We don't spend money for those as what possibly the procurement law actually provides for. So I think for that minimum annual guarantee is they are guaranteeing a minimum that they're going to pay the airport for the space and for the services that they're providing. And that can be above and beyond what we actually charge. And it is above and beyond what we charge for per square foot space on an annual basis. And typically, the older types of concession agreements include the greater of the MAG or the percentage of the sales that they are able to get. So we get if there's more activity, you know, there's more activity for the concessions than.
So what it comes down to is the more people, the more passengers that come to their counters, the more people that spend in their concessions, in their stores, and their stands. That's actually where the revenue is generated. So if there is no passenger, no sale, no revenue.
Then they pay the minimum.
Then they pay the minimum,
Yes.
which is becoming very difficult for a lot of them.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So, and I guess in the spirit of being able to keep some level of activity so that you can keep your passengers, you sure so don't want a passenger to walk into an airport and not be able to get a Big Mac or a quarter pounder of cheese before they get on the aircraft, okay, or buy, you know, some gifts, you know, for their family members. You want them to be able to survive, but also a chance for you to survive so that you can keep that space occupied, right?
That's correct.
Nobody occupying that space means no revenue for anybody.
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we have that. And thank you very much for that explanation. I guess the next one I want is, the legislation says to negotiate extensions for these agreements for up to an additional 3 years. Explain how you got to that up to 3 years. What's the necessity for that?
I think in terms of the impact of the pandemic, you know, that was one of the basis for that up to 3-year time limit.
Had you known that Marwar was going to happen last month, would that have changed?
Probably 3 years and 1 month. Or 2 months, or however.
Yeah, and
but yes.
I get it. And I think that one of the things that I can appreciate first off is it's not just the uniqueness of our industry, but the importance of our industry and the challenge that our industry has in the current marketplace today. You know, Ricky, Dr. Hernandez, you talked about and this was a discussion that I've heard you, John, talk about before, as we, Brian, that, you know, the airport plays a role in basically the marketing, if you will, of a destination that we are being competitive with. Okay? Now, outside of the lotes and you know, the concessionaires and everything, first look at Guam happens in your spot. Okay? And a lot of times that leaves an impression. I mean, remember several years ago, there was a survey that was done on incoming tourists, and you know, where Guam received the really bad marks was in that building because of the services, the lack of services and thereof. So it's important in that area, all right? And I can appreciate, and that's why I wanted to understand, you know, why the 3 years? Why the 3 years? And I think the 3 years, a lot of it has got to do, correct me if I'm wrong, is because there were challenges that happened over the previous 3 years that nobody expected. Okay? I don't think there was anybody had a crystal ball to expect that COVID was going to last for as long as it did. Last time I checked, according to Dr. Fauci, when it first came out, it was only supposed to last for 2 weeks. Okay?
Yes.
And then there was this thing that just happened about a month ago called Marwar. Okay? And all of this goes back to, no matter how great a facility that we have now, if we can't bring the tourists in, if we can't bring the passengers in, none of the concessionaires, we can have the best concessionaire, but if we don't have passengers, it's all for naught. So I can appreciate, you know, this, and I can appreciate now the understanding as to why the additional 3 years. Okay? It's basically, we need to play catch up for the past 3 years. You know, sometimes, a lot of times when policy is being considered, or when we think about moving forward, we forget about the times that we have to make up because of what happened in the past. What were your, let's talk about a little bit of the past. You said 2021 was one of your, was your down year?
That's when the full fiscal year, we had very limited passengers.
Okay, so what, in comparison to your best year, what was 2021 like?
Maybe 5%.
Yeah, our best year was, in terms of enplanements, was fiscal year 2019.
Okay.
2020, if you want to just annualize through January, that was the best 4 months of any 4-month period, I think. But yeah, fiscal 2019 revenues, we're looking at 78 million in operating revenues. At the lowest period, I think we were at 24 million.
How much?
24 million.
So you went from, which
78
78 to 24.
To 24. And
So-
in 2019, there were 1.8 million enplanements. That includes transits and locals. So it's a little bit higher than what would be considered an arrival. An enplanement is just anyone that gets on a plane. In 2021, we were at 135,000 enplanements.
That's it. Versus 1.8.
I'm just lucky you guys were able to keep the airport afloat.
Yes, sir.
At
Yeah,
that
and
point in time.
we still have to remain open 24/7. We still had, you know, even if it was 1 flight a day or, you know, 30 flights a day. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to end with this, and I have to agree with Senator Brown in an issue. Okay. I can understand as far as the concessionaires and concerns that we have with the huge space. You know, but with the smaller spaces and everything, if it, you know, if it wasn't named in the lawsuit specifically, challenge it. Challenge it, okay? Because, you know, I can see, I know your plans. We've talked about your plans and everything, and I just don't want us to go down the same road, down the road with other things, and then be stuck because of a minute or a little concern we have about language in it, in current litigation. Okay, but I appreciate the opportunity, appreciate the time to be able to talk about this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. To close on the bill, Senator San Agustin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank the panel for participating and for my colleagues for listening to the opinions and comments from the panel. And I just hope to, Madam Chair, that the committee report is reported out so that we can present this to the body to be discussed on the floor and then voted on. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, panel, for all being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Agustin. Thank you to the panel, to the airport, to Lotte and other vendors for your participation and engagement on this bill. And that concludes the public hearing for bill number 130-37. If anyone would like to submit written testimony to the office of Senator Shelton, you may do so by emailing officeofsenatorshelton@guamlegislature.org or dropping the testimony to the Guam legislature at the Guam Congress building. The time now is 3:57 p.m. and this public hearing for Bill 130 is adjourned. We will take a brief recess and come back for Bill 38-37. We are in recess. Buenas and half a day, everyone. Welcome to the Guam Congress Building. We are back from recess for Bill number 38-37. Introduced by Senator Tello Taitigui and Jesse Lujan, as well as Senator Joanne Brown, an act to amend Section 9105D, Section 9106, Section 9108A, and Section 9112, all of Article 1, Chapter 9, Division 1, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the powers and membership of the Guam Visitors Bureau. I'd like to thank committee members for joining us today, my Vice Chair, Senator Lujan, Senator Roy Quinata, Senator Chris Dueñas, and Senator Joanne Brown. To this, Masi colleagues, and I'll invite members who are here to testify. If you're here to provide oral testimony, please come up. Mr. Jeff Jones, board member of the Guam Visitors Bureau, and Mr. Jerry Perez, Vice President of the Guam Visitors Bureau. Hafaday, gentlemen, welcome, and to the team from GVB, thank you for being here today. Mr. Jones, please state your name for the record.
Jeff Jones. I'm a board member of the Guam Visitors Bureau.
You may proceed.
Hafaday.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I mean, normal courtesies are extended to the sponsors of the bill.
You're correct. Thank you, Senator Brown. I apologize. Senator Lujan, please proceed. One moment, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I apologize for Senator Tello, who introduced the bill, is unable to make it today. She's been under the weather for the past few days, but she'd asked me to read her testimony as well, and I'll be reading her testimony jointly with Senator Brown, who is the co-sponsor of Bill number 38-37. And would you want me to read the whole bill? Or
No, just
the
statement.
Okay.
I already read the bill title.
Okay. This bill, again, Bill number 38-37 COR. Buenas and good afternoon, Madam Chair, colleagues, and welcome to all those who have taken the time to come here to testify on Bill 38-37, introduced by, of course, Senator Tello Taitigui, myself, Senator Lujan, and Senator Joanne Brown. Bill 38-37 is an act to amend Section 9105D, 9106, 9108A, and 9112, all of Article 1, Chapter 9, Division 1, Chapter 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the powers and membership of the Guam Visitors Bureau. As published in numerous media reports throughout 2022, a number of issues concerning GVB, its board of directors, and their operations have come to light. Through my own experience, along with legal research and talks with the Guam Visitors Bureau leadership and membership, I found that many of these issues stem from the inherent mechanics of GVB's bylaws, the enabling statute, and the challenges that exist with superseding Guam laws. The truth is that for decades, the Guam Visitors Board of Directors have not been operating in full accordance with Guam law. Bill number 38-37 seeks to fix this while incorporating added layers of transparency, accountability, and above all, fairness. Numerous Guamanians of all walks of life and from many different industries serve our government as members of various boards and commissions. Each is required to comply with our financial disclosure regulations so that we, the public, are aware of an individual's financial position in relation to the power they are given. It is fair, it is just, it allows us to prevent unfair and illegal action from those who are self-serving, especially when dealing with public resources. Ladies and gentlemen, the members of the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors are not held to the same standard. They do not follow the basic financial disclosure laws that apply to the rest of us who serve. Senator Brown.
Bill number 3837 is a simple corrective measure that will allow us to know that our leaders are acting in the best interests of the public and not acting in their own financial benefit. Until Guam can tout real economic expansion with the diverse industries that can sustain our people, tourism will be our bread and butter. This means that those in charge of guiding our struggling industry must make sound decisions for all of Guam, not just for themselves and the large corporations that pay their salaries. Additionally, Bill number 38-37 will remove the longstanding practice that allows more affluent GVB members to buy more votes during Board of Directors selection, and it will end the practice of voting via proxy. One membership, one vote, be present. Being part of the GVB membership should be fair, and all members should be afforded the same rights. Ending unfair practices will allow our small business owners to have a seat at the table. Because these small businesses, these creative minds who have successfully launched small businesses, especially during the past few challenging years, are just the kind of voices we need in our quest for a full tourism rebound. And in the interest of transparency and accountability, the measure we hear today also will require the legislative appointees designated by the Speaker will be subject to approval from the body, meaning we all have a say and a voice in choosing who will represent the people. Madam Chair, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of Guam laws that must be modernized to meet our challenging needs. Bill number 38-37 is but one of them. We are open to any suggestions that will strengthen this legislation for the Guam Visitors Bureau, and we look forward to working with you, and thank you for all for participating in today's public hearing.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown and Senator Lujan, for the comments from Senator Taitigui as co-sponsors. Mr. Jones.
Afade, my name is Jeff Jones. I'm a member of the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors. However, I'm not testifying as a member, but as a personal board member, not as the board. It's not a position of the board. Afade, Madam Chairwoman, and the members of the committee. First of all, I would like to start off by saying that I support the intent of this bill as stated in Section 1, where it says, "It is therefore the intent of the Guam legislature through the provision of the act affecting the powers and membership of the Guam Visitors Bureau to eliminate roadblocks preventing small businesses from contributing their ideas at the highest levels of GVB decision-making process." Unfortunately, there is very little in this bill that will actually encourage, let alone accomplish, more participation by small business. The first change the bill suggests is to accomplish more small business participation is to require all board members to comply with the Guam Public Official Disclosure Act. The bill goes on to say that this requirement will eliminate opportunities for well-funded members of GVB to monopolize or otherwise unfairly influence decisions involving the use of taxpayer resources. I don't see how the two are related. The current board is already required to disclose any conflicts of interest through the Statement of Disclosures to the Guam Election Commission, as well as required by GVB auditors to disclose any related party affiliations to the GVP vendors as defined in the Government Accounting Standards Board. The only thing that requiring all board members to comply with the Guam Public Official Disclosure Act will accomplish is to make it harder to get qualified board members from both large and small businesses. Few, if any, business people will want to disclose their personal financial statements and information for a volunteer position on the GVB board. This requirement passes. If this requirement passes, I doubt any of the current board members would continue in their current positions. But perhaps this is the real intent of the provision. The other change that is made is in Section 3 of this bill is to change the required number for a quorum and affirmative action votes from 8 to 7. I'm not sure how this will encourage any additional small business participation, but it will make it easier to pass resolutions and appoint or remove management and legal counsel that serve at the pleasure of the board. Also, Section 3, the bill proposes to change the way elected members are replaced in case of a board vacancy. Previously, 2 of the remaining elected board members would choose a replacement, but the proposed change is for at least 5 of the remaining directors to make a selection. I believe it is unfair to the membership who should be represented by their choice and not the board choice. I suggest the best way to handle this is just to allow the candidate that received the next highest votes from the last membership election to fill this position. Alternatively, a new election can be called at the next general membership meeting to fill the position. In Section 5, the bill proposes to remove the opportunity of contributing members to acquire multiple voting rights by the purchasing of up to 10 votes at $100 each. Personally, I do not have a problem with this change, but I do believe that some stakeholders in the tourism industry have much more at stake, and there should be some mechanism to recognize that and allow more input on the decision-making processes. The other change is the removal of proxies in the voting process. This is problematic in two ways. First of all, it will be more difficult to establish a quorum for the general membership meetings without the use of proxies. And second of all, proxies assist members in establishing coalitions to choose and vote on their candidates. This includes small businesses that may seek to put forth their candidates. In closing, I believe the easiest way to assure small business representation on the GVB board is to reserve 1 or 2 seats exclusively for small business. Perhaps one seat from the 4-member elected seats could be reserved for small business, and 1 seat from the government-appointed seats could be reserved for small business. The definition of small business would have to be established, but that should not be difficult, as many standard industry classifications already exist for small business designation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Perez.
Thank you very much, Senator. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Amanda Shelton, Vice Chairman Jesse Lujan, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jerry Perez, and I am the Vice President of the Guam Visitors Bureau. I am here on behalf of President and CEO Carl Gutierrez, who is unable to attend today's public hearing. President Gutierrez is currently in Japan, conducting in-country marketing and promotional activities to continue to build industry momentum after the devastation of Typhoon Mawar. And by the way, also the lingering adverse effects of the pandemic on our source markets, which continue to cause our chief industry's performance to lag. I should also mention that my testimony is not the GVB board position, but only management's perspective. And prudence would suggest a discussion with members of the board, since notice for this hearing did not align with enough time for them to meet under the open government law. As a preliminary matter for the record, this testimony comes from the perspective of management, accountable by statute for the administration, operation, and strategic direction of the Bureau. The development of a viable tourism industry was made possible 61 years ago when President John Kennedy lifted a World War II security clearance requirement for travel to and from Guam. Subsequently, the political, business, and community leadership of the mid-60s and early 70s authored the enabling law that facilitated the growth of an industry that is to become a third of the island's $5.2 billion economy, second only to the combined federal spending on defense, transfer payments, and other federal socioeconomic programs. In the early years, when tourism was a nascent industry, the enabling statute allowed there to be an arrangement where government and private business interests served together on the GVB board. It was a natural evolution from when Governor Manuel Guerrero created the Guam Tourism Commission by executive order. That commission created a unique but instrumental partnership between the industry and local businesses, or rather local business leaders from the Guam Chamber of Commerce. The idea at the time was to employ private sector expertise into an activity of marginal knowledge to the government, thereby gaining the strategic benefit of being joined at the hip, to be colloquial, in developing a new industry that was generally unfamiliar to the island's political leaders at the time. Present-day government industry paradigm has changed that. Much has changed in the last 6 decades that tourism has flourished in Guam, not least the community's experience, institutional knowledge, and understanding of the industry, the competitive nature in obtaining its enabling public resources, and the struggle for market share among competing businesses. Herein lies the perception, real or imagined, of a one symbiotic relationship morphing into a situation where vested interests might be seen to be taking advantage of a strategic position to focus on their own specific business, employer, or investment, rather than the general community benefit as envisioned and originally intended by the legislature. To be clear, as Board Member Jeff pointed out, it is important for these businesses to participate in public discourse and decisions affecting their tourism business, but doing so may not necessarily exempt them from the burdens of transparency, ethical conduct, and public accountability in the stewardship of public funds. These are important issues that require deeper discussion with the community. The transformative power of tourism radically changed Guam's social and economic landscape, created challenges and opportunities that few might have imagined, and broadened the industry's constituency in the management of GVB. The proliferation of local and federal statutes has also emerged in the last 6 decades that impact corporate behavior, international trade, financial stewardship, and governance of public institutions, to name but a few issues of public interest to a community now more than twice the population of the 60s. It is against this backdrop that recent discussions have emerged in the public domain concerning the Bureau's operations and management responsibility, role of the board as enunciated in statute, incongruities between the bylaws and enabling law, as well as the applicability of other local and federal laws, some of which were enacted in more recent decades. Indeed, much discussion continues to this very day among senators, the governor's office, industry stakeholders, GVB management and board directors past and present, as well as various individual members of the Bureau concerning the management and administrative structure of GVB. Central to these discussions are adherence to the Bureau's enabling law, board directors taking issue with findings and opinions of legal counsel on matters of corporate governance, GVB bylaws, and local statutes of relevance, including the open government law, conflicts of interest, financial disclosure, public accountability, and ethical standards, as well as the board's duty to claw back wrongful expenditures. Questions of corporate governance, wider membership participation on the board, membership voting rights, and alternatives to the way elected directors are currently chosen are among issues that have provoked the idea for a completely new and revamped GVB enabling law. This initiative was actually suggested at this committee's oversight hearing several weeks ago, but found little appetite during the ensuing dialogue because of the length of time such an effort would take to ameliorate factors of contention that many believe need to be addressed at this time. The consensus reached to date was for the current law to be modified incrementally in addressing problematic issues rather than completely rewriting the enabling law. Further input from another committee oversight hearing was to have been conducted, but for the typhoon and schedule conflicts. Having this hearing would have produced comments germane to honest policy disagreements and which could have added value in bringing differences of opinions to policy outcomes. There are policy options that could be woven into existing law that could clarify or otherwise eliminate factors of potential conflict in GVB's administration and operation, to wit. Number one, financial disclosures must be required for all directors, no matter how they are put on the board, to build trust that discretion is taken for the public good, or at the very least, so all can see individual board members act and vote in the light of day. Number two, making financial disclosures a continuing obligation. Circumstances change, and so should disclosure. Number three, equitable membership voting rights to ensure quorums at properly announced membership meetings. Number four, equitable participation in the selection of directors to widen membership opportunity to serve on the board. Number five, elimination of inequitable voting schemes by elimination of multiple votes for members and related persons and entities. It is not unusual for corporate board decisions to be based on invested funds in the organization. However, GVB is a publicly funded corporation spending tax dollars, making it problematic for smaller companies and individuals to be constructively excluded from participation in these decisions because of cartel influence. Number six, selection of private directors could be done using one of two possible options. Number one, direct appointment by the governor of Guam from a pre-selected list of 10 to 15 candidates generated by its members at the annual meeting. Or secondly, members electing 4 directors at the annual meeting, as is currently the case. Number 7, at a meeting on March 20, which was attended by GVB Chairman Chu, President Carl, and myself, the governor was keen to option 1 above, and Chairman Chu expressed agreement. Number 8, clarity that corporate governance through the board does not affect the corporate structure, which is under the legislature's control. Number 9, ensuring that accretion of board power is controlled by the regulatory process as is envisioned in the current law. If I could clarify this a bit, there are a number of assertions that the board rightly wants to make that is being prevented now by the way the statute is written, when all that needs to be done really is to take the initiative and go through the administrative, the AAA process to basically empower them to act in the manner that they so choose. Number 10, clarity regarding eligibility to be elected to the board seat. This past board election made it clear that there are a number of provisions that create gray areas and possible traps for the unknowing. Number 11, ensuring that selection of a member by the board, currently the 12th director, is open and transparent. Board members have provided statements that show that there are non-public discussions about who the selectees are. Number 12, ensuring adherence to the open government law at membership meetings, because that is GVB business. Number 13, adherence to the principle that the board can only act through votes given at a lawfully held public meeting. The board, since at least 2014, were not made through resolution regarding directives given to management, which is required by law. In this regard, we note that board members often direct employees to take action without a resolution, which is required by the text of the law. Number 14, requirement by law to have yearly reporting to the legislature of the progress of reforms. Management created the Business Risk Compliance and Control Committee, or the BRCC, to oversee corrective action where there are material business issues involved. This, we believe, must continue, as all responsible corporations have such arrangements. There are also a number of structural and organizational issues that might need to be addressed, whether through the BRCC or through later legislation. For instance, financial reporting obligations. In subsidizing corporate promotional activity, for example, it appears that tax reporting has been neglected. Public corporations are required to report taxable transactions. However, monies paid to corporations or for their benefit do not appear to have been previously reported to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. These are reportable events, including when paid to nonprofit organizations, but not compliant as a non-taxable nonprofit transaction. This puts emphasis on financial transparency and due diligence. Madam Chair, members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony on behalf of President Carl Gutierrez, and we look forward to discussing its provision at either this or other hearings with other industry stakeholders. I should add that there's been some confusion in the date of this hearing, Senator. The first notice I got alluded to a Thursday 4 o'clock meeting, and then more recently I noticed the announcement that you had put out, which is what we responded to. And I think there are still members, we believe, who were expecting to come to the hearing tomorrow, not really realizing that the date is today. So
The only
I apologize.
notice put out from the committee was for today.
Yeah, I understand that, but so I apologize for that misunderstanding.
Sure. No problem, and we will continue to have the roundtable discussions as we've previously planned before the typhoon, so we will pick those up again in the coming weeks. We'll now begin with questions. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Perez, is it based on the adherence to the notices and open government law that the board members weren't able to meet and have I guess, a position on this bill? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There are a number of board members all over the place, and so, sorry, Jim, sometimes it's a chore to make sure that everybody is on the island for a meeting.
I understand.
And so that added to the time,
Sure.
made it very difficult for the board members to be able to.
Sure, no, I
continue.
understand. And I just wanted to reiterate that the statement that you wrote is based on management's adherence to statute.
That's right.
Basically. And
That's
so
right.
this is not a board.
Understand.
A board decision and comments that you're putting forth,
This
right?
is management's perspective.
Based on statute, right?
Exactly.
Based on statute. Thank you very much. How many members are there in the Guam Visitors Bureau? Total membership?
There are, it depends on what year, so let me.
Currently, I guess.
Let me
based
defer
on the
to,
last election, I guess.
We have
Okay.
staff here that can answer the number.
Okay.
214.
214.
Yeah.
Okay. 214. I got 209 here, but 214 is fine. Okay. You know, this bill also calls for, I guess, to the elimination of proxy voting. Okay. I guess polling the votes here. And the reason why I asked here is because you had, based on statute and adhering to statute and Mr. Jones's testimony in regards to the financial disclosure may limit small businesses as well to wanting to be members. But when we looked, and again, current membership, you have 214 members. The last election, and I guess, right, is you have 214 members, yet you had one company that had 240 votes.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, and consolidating all the proxies.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And that's what this bill basically, and that's what the author of the bill and co-authors of the bill are looking at in the vote buying, basically, and how the small business is underserved. Because, again, right, is if the Guam Election Commission, if you had only 214 registered voters, then all of a sudden you have 240 votes. They'll say, they'll say, "Ayade, what's up with this," right?
Yeah.
But this allows it. I mean, the current operations, current goings on, current, and has been not just now, but ever since, that's been the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So that is, so you can see where, again, the smaller business, mom and pop who is tourism related, owned by a couple people or one person, may have 10 employees. Yeah, they may buy 10 votes. How much per vote?
100.
$100 per vote. So the small business can possibly buy all members, all employees, their votes, but if they're limited, 5, 10, maybe even 2, maybe just the owners, as opposed to bigger corporations that could, actually, they could buy membership for all their employees, right? I mean, there's no cap on how many members in that company can buy?
No, it's a maximum of 10.
Maximum 10? Okay,
Yeah.
a maximum of 10, okay. So basically the 240 was pooled, was a pooling of
Yeah.
votes.
That's it.
Pooling, okay, got it, okay. So pooling of votes.
If I might add, Mr. Vice Chairman, there are different models associated with something of similar concern. The Guam Chamber of Commerce is an example where the bylaws were modified so that there is reserved in the total board seating at least a slot for 2 small businesses, if I recall, Jeff, right? Yeah. So that's a different model that, from what we're talking about, but I'm just sharing that with you.
Sure.
Since both of us.
Yeah,
have
a
served
different
here.
model, but not a GovGuam agency, not a government entity.
Yeah.
Totally different animal.
Yeah.
Got it, okay. Now, let me ask you this. And I think I know it already, but I just want to get it on record again to clarify it. Do you think the conflict of interest statement is sufficient as opposed to a submitting financial disclosures?
Well, you know, those are 2 different standards. I mean, from my own personal perspective, one is a basically attestation. The other one is an actual proof of, show, verify. That's the difference. 2 different, the same basic intent, but the enforcement standards are different.
Yeah. I mean, the airport authority, they just hear prior to public hearing on the bill as well. Their board is required as well to submit financials, conflicts, and they have, I mean, in years past and even present, you've had members of greater wealth than maybe most people, right? Is that, yeah. Is that a deterrent, do you see? Is that a big deterrent?
I'm not really sure that is, Senator, because in the past, appointed members to the board who are business people submit financial disclosures as required. So the notion that people may not want to join because of that may or may not be the case depending on individual, specific individuals.
GVB then I mean, rather than a nonprofit, should be a profitable organization? I
You mean GVB?
Yeah, Guam Visitors Bureau, yeah, I mean,
That's a major policy decision that actually is not unrealistic. If we really want to go that discussion, there are opportunities for self-sustaining ability of GVB.
now again,
But that's going to
Sure,
take
sure.
it into a different. I mean, I think we're familiar with like the Hawaii experiment.
sure,
or, yeah, where-
absolutely. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think Hawaii is, they're morphing into almost their GITA equivalent, right? Something of that nature,
Yeah, they
something
have
like that?
what they call an HTA.
Yeah.
And then they contract out private corporations to be like Hawaii Tourism Japan or Hawaii Tourism Korea. These are private entities that really are for profit as well as getting grants to promote the state.
Sure.
Yeah. That's a different model from what.
A different
yeah.
model. I mean, but is that, in your professional view, is that a model that GVB can look at in the future?
Could be. Yeah. Yeah, it could be.
How far down the line you think? I mean, we need to get over the pandemic and this typhoon and all that, and
I have no idea, Senator. A lot would depend on what we find in doing our due diligence.
We've had problems, of course, with the, I mean, it's been contentious this past few months in regards to adherence and, the open government law. As you said in your testimony, board members not necessarily adhering to legal counsel's advice. And your thoughts on that, because this bill is a result of previous meetings that we've attended,
Yeah.
the Guam Visitors Bureau, and also roundtables. So, and most, I think, if not all, everybody agreed to the incremental process in which to I guess come about and to better formulate the board and its bylaws.
Yeah. If I could clarify, the disagreement on legal opinions typically prevailed, but that doesn't mean that there's agreement about it.
Sure.
Even though they follow it, they may not agree with it, but typically, as I recall, Jeff, it's being followed. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'm speaking to the current board. Maybe it's the previous board, But anyway, again, this bill is a result of that. Now, Jerry, because you've had you've been at GITA in a previous administration as well. Again, would you consider revamping GVB, enabling legislation to mirror that of GITA?
That's a possibility, Senator. I mean, historically, when GITA was formed ages ago, as was GVB, the idea at the time was to make it as private a corporation as possible without the encumbrances of government regulations and so forth. And so when GITA was formed, decades ago, that was the case. Unfortunately, what had happened in the years following that is that more and more requirements or benefits or regulations that apply to line agencies were shackled onto GITA. So GITA basically went from a very, very closely private corporation to something of a blend, and sometimes it creates problems. So we either one thing or another, but in between raises a lot of problematic issues.
Okay. In your opinion, do you think board members should comply with financial disclosures as well as the open government laws?
My personal opinion?
Your personal opinion?
I believe so, yeah,
Or adherence to both?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you don't think the financial disclosures will hinder membership, the desire to want to be a member?
As a general rule, in my opinion, I don't believe so because, like I say, in the past, we've had appointed board members who are private business people who submit to financial disclosures.
Yeah.
So that's not an impediment in that case. There might be individuals for their own personal reasons who may not want to do that. And of course, you know, that's up to them. But the standard, I think, ought to be the same.
Dr. Paris, you've both been you've been in the private sector in a big corporation, likewise government as well. So you've seen both sides, you've worn both hats. Your opinion, and being with GVB now for actually because you've been there previously, so you're not new to this agency. How can the board improve its transparency?
How could the board improve its
transparency? Yeah.
by following the law?
Like all board members do,
Yes.
like all other board members?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in your opinion, you're...
Because, you know, when GVB was formed like 60, 50 some years ago, a lot of the laws now that require a certain ethical standard and financial disclosure standards were not in effect at that time. It's just in recent decades when those laws were passed that basically require them. So I think that's part of the issue. Never had it before. And then in recent decades, different laws, that's what I meant earlier in my testimony, federal and local statutes have passed in the intervening years, which require certain things to emerge and be a part of the governance model.
I may want to come back after other questions, but let me ask you one more thing. There was an investigation that was forwarded to the Attorney General's office. Has there been any word from the Attorney General's office regarding the investigations that you guys had submitted or had forwarded to the Attorney General?
We have made the referral, but I haven't heard or been in contact with them.
Well, likewise, the Office of Public Accountability, right? If I'm not mistaken, it was referred to both?
It's also referred to them, and we do have a meeting scheduled with them.
With both of them?
OPA, not the AG, with OPA.
OPA, okay.
And I would imagine that might be an issue that would come up, but I don't know.
Okay.
We have a scheduled meeting for them, I believe, tomorrow on the audit, among other things.
Sure.
So I don't know.
I'm sure in the next roundtable that we have that you would reveal, I mean, whether it's relevant to the investigation or not, right? Yeah? Okay.
Sure.
Madam Chair, that's all I have for right now.
Thank you very much. Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, and certainly welcome to both of you for coming to testify on this bill. I think the key issues that continue to come back have to do with the membership and the voting. That seems to continue to resurface. And then also, as you were just discussing with Senator Lujan, the issue of disclosure. For us as public officials, it's nothing new. I mean, certainly I've been in government now going on 35 years, and for any time I've been in a position of either the legislature or running a department, I'm required by law to provide financial disclosure. So, you know, where my bank accounts are, what my balances are, how much money I have in my wallet at the time I make my financial disclosure. So that's nothing foreign to us, and I guess it's expected because we're in a position of making decisions over public resources, public assets, and public money. I'm assuming the whole intent is to ensure we don't abuse that.
That's right.
That we're not pocketing or profiting from our position of authority for the time that the people give it to us. So I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation for anyone else who's making decisions with regards to public money. And that is where I think we need to clarify that issue. And I understand certainly from Mr. Jones's position, I mean, anyone who has an investment on Guam and a business, there's obviously concerns. You're going to want to know that things are going in a good direction that's going to allow us to continue to grow and certainly our economy to continue to grow. But we certainly don't want anyone to misuse their position to benefit themselves. That's, as a matter of fact, we're supposed to sacrifice. So what it's all about for the time that we're here, we're supposed to sacrifice so that we, our families, our close friends, don't benefit from our position of influence. And I think with regards to GVB, there's always kind of been a cloud that we need to really need to address. In all fairness, how do we clarify that? And then this issue of simply providing conflict of interest statements, I simply sign it and say I have no conflict of interest. And I understand a number of years ago that was added because there was a concern, we can't get enough members of the public to want to serve on boards and commissions if they have to review their financial disclosure, which we always have to do. It's no big deal because we have no choice. And I think that's what we need to determine. Is it worth it? And should we simply have, if someone doesn't want to reveal their finances, as is their choice, do we have them not serve them, in this capacity? I think as public policymakers, we need to make that decision because I can simply sign that, but what does that mean? If I don't reveal, or I make an interest in my capacity sitting on the board, GVB, that may represent a sub-business interest I might have, or a nonprofit involvement I might have, or whatever the case may be. And these allegations that have come forth, of course, we don't know what the outcome of whatever investigations may be occurring, and I'm sure that will take its own course. But the fact that those issues were raised is kind of concerning to those, certainly myself. I know a number of our colleagues are concerned about it, and that's, I know, the impetus for why this bill was generated. So can I get feedback from either one of you with regards to your thoughts on that? Do you think simply saying I have no interest, no conflict is adequate enough while you're making decisions over millions of dollars of funds that are intended for public development, including primarily in our tourism industry, but still revenue that's generated through this government for that purpose?
Well, I think that going into the position, that needs to be made clear from the beginning because the current law doesn't require that. So if you're going to change it, that's your prerogative.
It was changed before. It used to require financial disclosures.
It's not changed since I've been on the board.
Yes.
So
It was
only thing
changed
I'm
in
aware of.
my last time around here. Yeah.
So I think that if it's, if that's what the policy will be, then that's what it is, and people have to make a decision based on that. So I don't think it's right or wrong. I think that individuals have to decide what they're willing to disclose.
Okay. And for you, Mr. Perez?
I agree. I mean, that's what I was referring to earlier in a discussion, that the concept is the same, but the standard is different.
And you had mentioned that, as time has changed, these new requirements have come into place with regards to, and for me, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, at least for the years I've been in, and it's been a long time, the ethical issue hasn't changed. I mean, it's the understanding between right and wrong, what you should do and should not do within your capacity. Because certainly, depending on where you are, you can be in a tremendous position of influence to move things, right? And you just got to make sure you're not moving them towards you. That's pretty basic. So, these requirements to me are not new. I mean, I think that's just pretty standard. This issue of voting has always been kind of strange because I'm assuming if we only have 30,000 registered voters on Guam, we shouldn't have 40,000 showing up for the election. Then you got to wonder, what's going on? I mean, we've had elections where we've had, and it's been proven, and I know because I was aware of one particular case of a gubernatorial team that took that issue to court of having members of our community, unfortunately, had passed away.
I think
but somehow resurrected on the day of the election, to go vote. And miraculous. I want to know how to do that.
Can I comment?
Sure.
I think that originates from the idea that GVB would be a private or public corporation and have shares. And because in a regular company, you'd have shares, and that determines the number of votes you have, right? So I think that was probably where it started. I agree. I don't think it's the best way to do it. And I think that is something that definitely should be revisited on how how many votes you get for your membership.
Could it simply be just expanding the membership then? And, if 500 other members of our community in tourism wanted to join and do it that way so that it's more transparent that...
Possibly. But I think-
versus the shares
I think the
concept?
proxy is an issue because it's hard for us to get quorum, and proxies help you get quorum because if somebody can't make it, they can give you your proxy and you can go and establish quorum. I think at the election previous to the last one, we had a problem with getting quorum because.
Yeah, but that was just the opposite there. The thing before was that there is a overabundance of a block that didn't show up, so there was no quorum. So it's just the opposite. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's
it
plus
goes
and
both
minus.
ways.
I think proxies are pretty common in the type of organization that we have.
Of course.
So.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, in talks, the talks and concerns, because I've had members of the tourism committee community approach me about what they see as a control of the bigger, boys and girls running the show, so to speak. And, in the most recent election, it's reported that certainly one of our hotels that have a number of hotels on Guam, I think we all know who that is, had like 240 votes. You had one of our airlines have 50 votes. You had one individual that by themselves represented 230 votes, and two people combined represent 285 votes. The likelihood of probably all those large votes going whichever direction they went is probably fairly good. And I think, it does raise concern. I understand the idea of buying shares, and if you got the money on the table, you can buy more shares. That seems fair, but at the other end, because it is dealing with public asset and public money, that's where the concerns come forth. I mean, if it's your own money, you're free to do whatever you want to with it. But I think the concern with regards to it and the legislation's hoping to address is how do you equitably ensure the proper expenditure of public money. And again, the whole idea of the Guam Visitors Bureau is to move forward our tourism industry and support that industry to continue to thrive and grow so that ultimately everyone in our community will benefit. But I think those are the underlying concerns that need to be addressed. I wanted to ask with regards to the board, the current board, how does the current board take action? If they put forth a policy decision, how does that get implemented in terms of your position and Governor Gutierrez's position in your respective, is that directed towards you? Are you the mechanism that facilitates that within the Guam Visitors Bureau? Does the board have direct access to your personnel and directing them to do things? What is the process and procedure for that, for our awareness and the public's awareness?
Well, the process is for the board to agree and pass a resolution for us to be directed to do something. Yeah, that's a process.
So
it
they
hasn't
set the
been like that
policy.
all the time, but in recent, the last couple of years, when we drilled down more into the proper operating manner between the board and management, that's what we've encountered. And so basically the board has been pretty good in recent months in terms of wanting anything from management. They pass a resolution directing management because at the end of the day, as Vice Chairman indicated, it's management that really operates, implements, the Bureau.
And the board, obviously, they hire the management team. They select the management team.
They hired my boss. The board has one employee, basically. That's President Carl.
And that's how the process goes. It's through formal resolution, and then that provides you in writing direction of what you're
That's
supposed
the
to
way
take through policy.
it's functioning.
I see. Madam Chair, I have a testimony I know that Senator Tideway would like me to read for the record, but I certainly will do that after our other colleagues have asked any questions
you.
or comments they may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you.
Brown. Speaker Terlahi?
Thank you. Just in furtherance of what you were discussing, Deputy Perez, how the management acts pursuant to resolution by the board. So the GVB recently announced grants for the community, and I think they even awarded them. Is that correct? They've already been awarded. Was that pursuant to resolution of the board as well?
No, because for this fiscal year, there is a provision, I forget the exact provision in the budget law, but because there was this uncertainty that was happening at the board and management level, and the BRCC report has not been resolved, and that's kind of an ongoing thing. I believe the Finance and the Ways and Means Committee had inserted a provision in the budget law that gives the president and CEO for this year only latitude in managing the financial operations of the Bureau.
Right, right. So the current statute enabling laws of GVB mandate that the board direct the expenditure of funds. Were those tourist attraction funds, general, or from the government of Guam, or were those other funds such as ARP funds?
I'm not sure about the ARP funds. But it's typically the TAF money, yeah.
Okay. And the, yeah, so you're right. And then, but in the budget law, there was a provision put in that said that despite the enabling legislation for GVB, fiscal authority and responsibility would fall under the authority of the general manager, right,
Yeah.
for FY 2023. Okay, that's why I was asking about that, whether there was a resolution on that. On your recommendations, well, first of all, so Mr. Jones in his testimony referenced that the GVB auditors require them to disclose any, quote, related party, unquote, affiliations to GVB vendors as defined by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Are you familiar with that requirement?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we just issued a few days ago from our auditors. That's part of the GASB requirement, right?
And so when do they disclose this?
Sorry?
When do they disclose?
This is for the audit year.
This was just a couple of days ago. It was because of the audit is happening now.
So is it like once a year they disclose
I believe so.
in preparation of the audit?
Right.
And when you say related parties, does that mean that anybody that GVB has done business with, they'll relate
They have
whether...
they have a list of vendors.
Okay, so they give you the vendors and you say whether you are a related party or any affiliation to any of those.
Yeah, that's part of the
okay.
test that the auditors
All right.
have extra.
And the public disclosure, our ethics laws really require us to disclose if, of course, we have a financial interest in a vendor or our immediate family, and they have a definition of that, right? Has that. So do you think...
Excuse me, or organizations that they are affiliated with or in control. Not just their businesses and their family members, but there could be third-party nonprofit or for-profit organizations as well.
Okay. So do you think that that is the difference between what is required under the ethics law and this? Or by the GVB auditors? What materials not disclosed? I mean, at the GVB auditors, they just say whether or not you have an affiliation with any of those companies. It's a yes or no. And then under the ethics law, it would be you have to disclose all of your business affiliations?
Anyway, right, ahead of time. But this is just
Yeah.
part of the audit
Yeah.
test.
All right. And, okay, so on your recommendations on numbers 8, 9, and 10, 8 says clarity that corporate governance through the board does not affect the corporate structure, which is under the legislature's control. What do you mean by that?
Sorry?
Number 8 of your recommendations, you want corporate governance through the board does not affect the corporate structure, which is under the legislature's control.
Yeah, in other words, the corpus and GVB as it exists now is a public, non-stock, non-profit corporation. And so the integrity of that, no matter what is done in the legislation, the idea is to keep it whole. The the enabling statute, the codified charter of the Bureau. That's what I mean. Yeah.
You're saying that the board should not do anything that conflicts with the law?
Yeah.
Okay. And number 9, your recommendation is ensuring that accretion of board power is controlled by the regulatory process as is envisioned in the current law. What do you mean by the regulatory process?
This is what I was alluding to when I was reading my statement, is that there are many things that have been taken for granted in the past where the board believes that they have authority or the right to do. But the way the enabling statute is written, they do not, unless they've gone through the AAA process of asserting that right. For example, I'm just trying to think what's an easy example. Is what was it that we were working on? Sorry? The committees. We have certain committees that were functioning now, but the board really has no control over those committees. The committees are just like working committees, right? But what the board could do is assert their control of these committees, and all they need to do is go through the administrative process, the AAA process. Also on matters that relate to personnel, perhaps. Right now, it's really controlled by management, but if the board wants to get more involved in personnel matters, they can assert that and just go through the AAA process and make that a part of their portfolio. So it's not like they can't do it. It's just that the way the enabling statute is now enunciated, it doesn't give them affirmatively that role. And so by exercising that role, it would be more extra virus act, and that can be avoided by just going through the AAA process.
All right, so are you saying that the current committees are not subcommittees of the board? Those are not subcommittees of the board? They're committees created by management, you're saying?
Yeah, and that's why we're very sensitive when we have committee meetings like that there not be more than one board member in attendance to avoid any notion that business is being conducted when 2 or more board members get together. As a matter of caution, however, we try to announce those meetings as a public meeting anyway, just to err on the side of caution.
And I've seen non-board members also attend those meetings.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So you were willing to allow the public, but not the board members? Is this kind of strange?
Well, that's what I was saying, right? To avoid the appearance that if there's 2 board members in that, then they're conducting GVB business, and so...
Is there anything to prevent the board, in your opinion, from establishing subcommittees?
No. Nothing. All they have to do, like I say, is just go through the AAA process and assert that right or practice.
Well, I don't see that for subcommittees. I see it if they're going to create rules and regs for employment, that they go, of course, through the AAA. And if they're going to create, like if they're going to decide on spending, I don't think they need to do AAA. I think the statute's clear. If they're going to do committees, I'm not sure I'm going to look, but yeah, it doesn't seem to require AAA for every action of the board.
Not every action, but...
they are authorized
that's right.
to create rules in certain occasions,
right,
yeah.
Right.
All right. And then number 10, clarity regarding eligibility to be elected to a board seat. Eligibility to be elected. Who would not be eligible?
Well, one example, what I meant by like create a gray area, one example might be a person who works for a company and is paid for by that company, whether he's a CEO of the company or an officer of the company, by being a member of the board, what they ought to do is get a corporate resolution from their private company saying that this is an approved activity of their officer and basically subjected to whatever exposure ensues from that relationship. And that was not clear because a lot of people didn't realize that they had to get a corporate resolution to be a part of the, slate.
Are there members of GVB members companies or only individuals?
See, that needs clarity. Are there members as individuals or representing a company? And therein lies the issue in the gray area I was talking about that needs clarity. When they come to be a candidate, what are they?
Yeah, but have you ever seen anything that says they are a company? Because I've only seen individuals. I mean, in what I've read in the statute, it always says individuals. Individuals, they pay membership, individuals vote, individuals act.
Yeah, but they represent companies.
Well, they, of course, all have families too.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's different, right? Because it's either going to be individuals and we're going to have to treat them like individuals despite the fact whether 100 people come from one company and pay $100 to become members, or if you want to change it to make it only companies can be members, and then we have to, that's how we're going to pick small businesses versus large businesses. That's a whole other scheme.
I understand what you're saying. Company A is a public company. It's not a private company, okay? They have an employee that wants to run on the board, but he's running on the board basically as part of that company, even though he's an individual member. That individual really ought to have a corporate resolution from the company saying that it's okay for,
But that's if he's going to act on behalf of his company. But I just don't see that in your law that anybody's acting on behalf of a company.
No, actually, this last
And that's
election.
between them and the company. If the company's saying you're going to be allowed to go to the meetings during our time,
No, but actually,
or whatever,
Senator,
then you have to act on our behalf.
Yeah, actually, we've seen this last election, particular individual listed as such and such from such and such a company.
Okay.
I think that is part of the problem is that, and that's one of the things, my view is that the enabling legislation needs to be written completely to make these things clear, because right now we have enabling legislation, we have bylaws, those don't even harmonize. So you're acting based on the bylaws, but in some cases it's illegal based on the enabling legislation.
Right.
There's no way we're going to reconcile this piecemeal. It's going to have to be done, in one fell swoop, if you will. Just get it all taken care of. It's going to take a while, but it needs to be done right. Like the last board election, I had a resolution for my company, and then I bought my own membership because it was unclear if you could run as a member, individual, or as a company representative. And I had a board resolution. So, I mean, cover all the bases, but, the harder we make it, the less members we're going to have. We need to make it easier to get more members, not make it harder. So.
Can I ask you, Mr. Jones, do you think it should be based on companies so that we distinguish between small and large companies, as you said earlier, and what kind of influence they will have over the Tourist Attraction Fund?
Yeah, that's debatable. I think that, the companies, I think for the most part, have always been the members of GVB, and they had a representative that represented them. But recently, that's been questioned, and so that's why individuals became members. But for the most part, I mean, since I've been on there, companies and members are the same. And then the individual is representing the company. So like I represented my company on the board. So
all right, it seems...
Well, a lot of these issues have come about as we really took a deeper dive into the enabling statute and its relationship.
Yeah.
And that's why some of these things are coming up now, because it was never really paid attention to in the past. And as a result of the BRCC taking a deeper dive into this.
Personally, I'm thinking, you know, what is the benefit of having a company represented versus an individual represented? Maybe you should have an industry represented, or, you know, portions of tourism, like what do you feel are necessary components of tourism, and have each of those components represented. Or something that, I mean, it has to be based on a principle, right? So individuals, I have no problem. That's a free-for-all, though, and so it's not company-based, so we're not going to be able to control the votes.
Yeah.
If there are 100 individuals and they coincidentally all belong to one company, that's the way it goes. But that company employs a lot more individuals, perhaps, right?
Yeah, actually, Madam Speaker, there are destination management models that actually have representation based on industry, based on size of the enterprise, and so forth. So that's not an unusual model.
Yeah. Of course we want to see things represented on the board, right? But in the way it is, we're not guaranteed that we will see that, right? So I think, traditionally we've seen retail represented, we've seen hotel represented, we tried to see small, how do they call that, activities, or those types of components in the tourism, like extra activities, that type of thing. So different components, and it evolves now, right? So the components are probably totally different than what we would have been recommending before. But right now, the way it's written, that's not what we're aiming for, it looks like, by law, unless it's changed. So maybe, I'm very interested in your recommendations, especially you, business. In the chamber, the membership is based on company, is that right? So companies, and every company pays the same membership fee?
It's based on your revenue.
Oh, your revenue. So you declare revenue and you
So your
pay.
annual revenue determines how many votes you get,
Okay.
and your fee structure.
All right.
And there was a change in the charter to reserve, I think it's 2 seats, minimum of 2
small.
seats on the board for small business as defined by revenue.
Yeah, because it's not every board on Guam that gets to be influenced by those who are actually practicing in that field, right? Some, yes, but not all. Some, it's completely random who gets appointed to the board. They don't even have to be practicing in that field, but the decisions are going to be made by others. So that's kind of the other extreme, right? Is we don't do membership and we just appoint all the members, right? Or the governor appoints all the members, as she does with many boards. And I don't know how that would be. I definitely see, I want to encourage participation. I think we should encourage participation, that by those who have a vested interest, it should be balanced, right? When we're talking about expenditure of the funds, I think of course it should be, I trust that having a large board is going to bring that, in public meetings, it's going to bring good use of the funds, that we are able as a community to look at that and we are able to talk about it. I am hoping that the fiscal authority is going to go back to the board as intended originally, and that way there will be discussion and debate and disagreement, which is fine, but at least where we have no control over how that money's spent, as a legislature representing the people, at least those who are elected. I just think, Madam Chair, that we can also educate our community a lot more as to how to become active in GVB as a member, as on a committee. And I tell everybody I meet, get on a committee on GVB, because they are very active in what exactly that committee is going to recommend. But anyways, I very much appreciate your testimony, and I see, of course, all the predicaments that we are all in, and but I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Senator Quinata. Senator Dueñas.
Madam Chair. And thank you to Mr. Perez, of course, and Mr. Jones for being here. I'm struggling to see what a duck is. Your testimony walks like a duck. It talks like a duck from GVB. Is it a duck? Do you support the bill?
In principle, there are provisions of the bill that we support fundamentally, but in fairness to others who aren't here, it'd be prudent to listen to the board members themselves, because the board has not taken a position. Yeah. But fundamentally, some of the key issues as regards transparency, as regards disclosure, as regards cumulative voting, in principle, management is in agreement.
So, through the process of the strain between the board and management, there has, and what led to the BRCC action or activity, there was always concurrence by legal counsel. Legal counsel is neither here nor represented in any position with regard to testimony. Can I get a comment on that?
Yes, actually, legal counsel was tied up in court cases, and he apologized for not being here this afternoon, but that doesn't mean to say that we can get his comments on the bill.
Are we to assume that legal counsel had any input in construction of your testimony?
He and I have discussed some of the issues. Most of it is really management's point of view. That there are a few areas here that we discussed that I've included in my testimony, just so we have a complete management perspective. Yeah.
So my final two questions, and I'm just going to ask you a question point blank, Jeff. But before I do that, I want both of you to answer this, please. It seemed to me that in the subsequent meetings, particularly the last meeting of committee roundtable type setting, there seemed to be a discussion that, and you mentioned it in your testimony, Mr. Perez, that that there have been the storm and other conflicts have not allowed for kind of the formulation of a comprehensive policy analysis, and it seemed to me like the board was talking about like a full board, buy-in on a bill, an actual brand new bill. And I think, Jeff, you've alluded to this in your testimony as well. Is this bill a vehicle, or is it the position of at least some board members and management that back to the drawing board?
Well, it's my opinion that this bill is kind of just tinkering around the edges. It really needs to be a full-blown rewrite, I think, of the enabling legislation and bylaws so that they're harmonized and they give clarity on all these areas where there's questions. Even like the voting members, who's voting, is it a member, is it a company, is it an individual? There's so many areas that I think are unclear that we don't have the ability to make decisions because half the time we're going to legal counsel asking, for their opinion. And, we don't always agree with the legal counsel either, so.
Yeah, from my point of view, it is a bill that can be the vehicle to incrementalize the improvement short of a complete revamp of the whole enabling statute. And that was the reason I added additional items in maybe something that the legislature should consider incorporating or not incorporating.
So let me go from a duck to an elephant. The elephant in the room, I think, and that's why I'm going to ask you this directly, Jeff. If we do legislation this way by taking care of a couple of things that this legislation identifies, which seems to be congruent with the testimony, at least from management, if there was financial disclosure requirement tomorrow, would you resign from the board?
I'm sorry? Say again?
If there was a financial disclosure requirement tomorrow, aside from your attestation and your, like even, I believe, Board Chair Mr. Chu has already mentioned on the record that he believes that his disclosure of interest is adequate for his position on the board. You mentioned in your testimony that you believe many board members would more than likely not serve if there was a full financial disclosure requirement. So I just wanted to put that question direct to you.
I wouldn't serve, no.
Okay. And I think that's the thing.
I think the disclosure is adequate if you're a person who's ethical and honest. Then, you know, even in the board meetings when there's ever a conflict, you know, I've only had one since I started, and I recused myself from the action. So it can be handled properly.
And, you know, Jerry, I think it is going to be important for the board and management to discuss in terms of policy decisions and discussions on policy, because this, you already see there is another divide here on the perception of this issue, and you're going, you know, you will, it looks like you will have, and that's why this body also has to understand how it's going to move, acting either, you know, a couple of items at a time in a bill or comprehensively, because, you know, that's, of course, this body can, with 8 votes, can do whatever it wants to do. But the thing is that I was under the impression under the most recent meetings that the effort was to try to harmonize. And to harmonize in a way, because I think this also public hearing has pointed out, there's a lot of ambiguity, and the current statute right now does not serve today's GVB. I don't think you can say it any other way. Because yourself as management, Jerry, and yourself as a board member, just representing yourself, Mr. Jones, have pointed out that this conflict in terms of statute as well as bylaws, right now, no matter what, whether you fix 2 or 3 things here, there's still outstanding incongruity that could put you at a collision course once again.
I think the board has tried to, the new board has tried to work with management under the current situation, bylaws, and enabling legislation. But I think that it's a struggle sometimes, you know, to know exactly what the role is, especially with the budget resolution or whatever that was that gave all control to the general manager. I mean, that basically just sidelined the board for the year, and we're just listening rather than making decisions. So that's something that really needs to change in the 2024 budget. So.
And that's why I'm going to just, once again, the elephant in the room, I mean, that single action basically, in a nutshell, created a situation whereby you have a board and and management that's not going to work together.
I'm not sure that's necessarily an accurate representation, Senator. I would just repeat that, in principle, the key provisions that we've discussed in the bill, management supports. I've added additional items that could perhaps enhance the meaning and intent of the original bill for consideration. That's basically from our point of view.
Okay, well, I'm going to look forward to the next roundtable, because I'm going to see if we've gotten closer or further.
Well,
That's just the truth.
Yeah, we're trying to work within a broken system, I think, is what's happening, doing the best we can, but we need to fix it if we're going to be more effective as a board and as management, I think. I think that's just the long term, that's what we have to do.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that that's going to be, and it's just me, of course, there's 15 of us, that's going to be my struggle going forward, to try to have to make a decision, because I don't know what comprehensive looks like. I know what this proposal looks like, but I also know that this proposal, and I mean, not saying others won't step up to serve, I don't know what that's going to look like. But I think that if we don't do it comprehensively and we do one or two things that creates an exodus of your board, Jerry, then, you know what I mean? We're going to be faced with a decision there too, because even the board membership and makeup and the way that things will move forward, unless we just vote again to go straight out with management control and whatever it is, that's going to be a further divide, in my opinion, than a unification of what we're trying to fix.
For the record, you had asked about legal counsel, and I have here actually a copy of legal counsel's comments and revisions to the proposed legislation to enhance the intent. So for the record, can I just submit this? Oh. He actually helped redraft it to make it easy. And so I'll just read it. This is addressed to President Carl Gutierrez. Management in late January to early February of this year requested our advice on Bill 38-37. This request came during the time when the board voluntarily and unilaterally suspended its corporate functions. In response to your request, we provide an opinion letter for management. The bill is set to be heard at the legislature, and so you have also requested that we draft a substitute bill that management intends to introduce at the legislature, which is my purpose at this time. Please find the draft substitute bill enclosed with this letter. For your convenience, we also enclose our opinion letter from February 15, analyzing and making recommended edits to the bill, which we use as a starting point to make edits for the substitute bill. Also, for your convenience, we enclose the instructions from management on the agreement struck between Governor Leon Guerrero and Chairman Chu regarding their desired changes to GVB's enabling law. This is the issue that I raised on the membership selecting 10 to 15 names from the industry to be submitted to the governor for appointment, much the same way that I guess the Guam Bar does for Supreme Court appointees. We note that the board has not had public discussion regarding the bill, nor has the board entertained any resolution on a corporate directive regarding its position. We note further that none of the board, nor any GVB member, nor any corporate director have sought our advice on the bill. It thus appears that the agreement between the governor, management, and Dr. Chu and Director Chu is not the board's corporate organization position that was put to vote on a resolution for a directive regarding the bill or substitute bill. However, we were told by management that Director Chu stated at a meeting with the governor and management that he would support the changes that management has transmitted to us. We are unaware whether management has provided our February 15 opinion letter to the board. Please recall that at a meeting earlier this year, Director Rhodes expressed her desire to receive our opinions. If memory serves, there was no motion regarding this instruction. Her request came after our February 15 opinion had been provided to management. Nevertheless, you may wish to consider whether to provide our opinion letter to the board together with the letter and the draft substitute bill. So this actually was addressed to us with the idea that it be shared with the board and also with the legislature as a...
Yes, please provide it to the staff to make copies.
As a product of his effort.
So Jerry, you've been around this place for a long time too. I'm not the chair nor the vice chair, but I will tell you
You're
that.
just saying I'm old.
I'm old too. My hair is waterproof as well. But what I'm saying is that, so that action, even as a substitute bill, I would imagine that the chair would reconvene a new public hearing for anything that extensive. So this is why I'm trying to get to where we are with this vehicle, so this body understands.
Okay.
So my final question would be to you, Mr. Jones. Do you envision the board at its next duly, regularly held board meeting and your announcement for that meeting to have included with it discussion on this potential legislation as well as maybe what's been brought forward by legal counsel now as a substitute bill and the board's position on it?
Well, our next meeting is tomorrow, but it's not on the agenda, so I doubt it'll be under discussion until the next board meeting.
So I won't envision that. That wouldn't be possible because of the open government law. But so then I'm going to take it to the next meeting. Do you believe that would be the action of the board?
Yeah, I envision that would happen. I don't control the agenda, but I would definitely suggest to put that on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow's a special meeting just to bring the board up to date on the Typhoon Mawar issue before, during, and the aftermath.
Well, I don't know the
I think the council's letter does bring to light the fact that, you know, there is an appearance, at least, that council works for management and not for the board. You know, the council serves at the pleasure of the board. Most of the opinions are directed towards management, and even as you could see in the letter, he's suggesting that maybe that should be shared with the board. But a lot of times that doesn't happen unless we specifically are aware of it and ask or request it. So this is part of the, you know, dysfunction that we have at the GBB right now.
So I only ask these questions simply because I don't know what the disposition of the committee will be. But for me, I would have difficulty voting on any committee report in this, with regard to this public hearing for this piece of legislation going forward. That's why I wanted to know kind of where things were going. And based on prior roundtable hearing as well, there seems to have been a discussion about a comprehensive measure. And so here we are, right? So members of this body have to kind of see where this goes, particularly those who would be voting on a committee report possibly, you know, and how we act going forward. And that's why I'm not trying to agitate a situation, but I'm trying to get enough information to know, you know, it's like I said, I don't know what the duck is here, because there's a lot of walking and a lot of talking, but does that mean it's a duck? And that's why I started that way. So I thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to garner more information, ask a few questions, and I for one, probably be looking at markups at a minimum, and now that we have on the record in legal opinion that talks about a substitute bill, I think we have a lot to talk about. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Senator Blas. Thank you very much. Senator Lujan, you wanted to ask another question?
Yes, just real quick. Board member, Mr. Jones, we're talking about, of course, the power of management at this point in regards to disposition of funding at this point, right? Yeah, and all that. And that was granted by the legislature based on the impasse that happened. Let me ask you this, in I guess your short time being there, you weren't there in the previous board, your short time being there, what would you say, would you agree with management and their decisions on expenditures?
I was actually on the previous board as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is my second term.
Okay.
Do I agree with them?
Well, yeah.
Some of them I agree with them, but like the TAP, which just came out, the funding for the what's it called, the TAP? Tourist Assistance Program. The board basically read about that when it was press released to the public. So we had no prior knowledge of that program. It's not a bad program. I think it's got some merits, but it would be nice to have some discussion about it.
Okay, okay. I think I know the answer to this question as well. Be up to the body, but I'll ask it anyway. Because whoever the speaker may be, they can appoint a member as well to the board. You think that member should have to go through a confirmation as well?
I'm sorry?
Whoever the speaker may be,
Yeah.
the new board, they have a member that they can appoint as well. You think that member should go through a confirmation hearing as well by the body?
I don't know. I mean, that's not really my area. I think that
I figured that's what you were going to answer. Yeah. No, I don't. But I wanted to ask you anyway. Yeah, let me read into to the record here. Senator Teidigui had received this June 21st to Senator Tello, Teresa Teidigui, subjects support of Bill number 38-37. Dear Senator Teidigui, I'm writing to express my strong support for your proposed bill to limit the election of one person to the Guam Visitors Bureau GVB elected board. While maintaining the current proxy system, I believe that this will contribute positively to the governance and effectiveness of GVB while ensuring fairness and accountability. As the president of the Korea-Guam Travel Association, I understand the importance of GVB in promoting Guam as a premier tourist destination. The Guam Visitors Bureau elected board members play a crucial role in making marketing decisions and strategies that drive tourism to our island. By limiting the election of one person, your bill will create a level playing field and provide smaller businesses with a fair chance and representation within the Guam Visitors Bureau board meetings. This change would ensure that the voices and concerns of small businesses are heard and considered while making critical decisions that impact the Guam tourism industry. Empowering small businesses and giving them fair representation within the Guam Visitors Bureau elected board will unlock their potential for growth, stimulate local spending, and contribute to the economic vitality of our island. Additionally, maintaining the current proxy system alongside the limited election will preserve the democratic nature of the Guam Visitors Bureau elected board. The proxy system allows individuals who are unable to attend meetings or physically participate in the electoral process to have their voices heard through designated proxies. These ensures inclusivity and representation of diverse perspectives within the board, fostering an environment of collaborative decision-making. By combining the benefits of limiting the election to one person and preserving the proxy system, your bill will strike a balance between major industry players and small businesses. It will enable the elected board members to make decisions that benefit both areas, ensuring the views of more diverse stakeholders. In conclusion, Senator Teidigui, I totally support your bill to limit the election to one person to the Guam Visitors Bureau elected board while maintaining the current proxy system. I believe that this proposal will improve the functionality and effectiveness of the board while ensuring fair representation and democratic participation. Thank you for your dedication serving our community and the Guam travel industry. Please let me know if there any way I can assist in promoting this bill. I trust in your leadership and commitment to our island. Sincerely, Terry Chung, President of Korea-Guam Travel Association. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Lujan. And Senator Brown, you wanted to make a final comment?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I know Senator Blas has any comments or questions? He's good? Okay. No, I don't. Again, I want to thank our participants here for coming today and providing input. I think ultimately the objective of this bill is trying to bring clarity to these key outstanding issues that I think have hampered GVB at this point. It's been quite some time since we've had some sense of what we'd like to see as normalcy with regards to the operations of the Guam Visitors Bureau, and we certainly put this bill forward so that we can work on that and get that clarity. So thank you for both of you coming. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown, and thank you, Senator Lujan, for the comments on the bill. On behalf of Senator Teidigui, thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Perez, for being here on behalf of GVB. and to the team who's been here patiently throughout the hearing. We will continue to have the roundtables. We will set up a new schedule for those and continue to discuss these options, as well as other suggestions that were made at that time, bringing the other stakeholders together, and we look forward to working together. I am a little surprised by this substitute version of the bill. I don't think this was mentioned in either of those roundtables when we were talking about different options for the GVB restructuring, but we will take this into consideration now with this committee report and with our roundtable hearings to come.
Yeah, the intention, Madam Chair, is to add value to the discussion, and so we've just asked Council not to just to testify, but to actually see specifically how the bill can be modified, and so that's an option. And we're just sharing it with you.
All right,
Yep.
Thank you very much. And with that, the time now is, or excuse me, if anyone has any further testimony on this bill, they can email it to my office at Office of Senator Shelton at guamlegislature.org or deliver it here to the Guam Congress Building. The time now is 5:48 p.m. and this public hearing on Bill 38-37 COR is now adjourned. Siduos Masi.